Good morning, everyone. Welcome. On behalf of Case Western Reserve University, the Weatherhead School of Management, and the Fowler Center for Business as an Agent of World Benefit, thank you for being here today. We're truly honored that you chose to spend your time with us. That's me. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to pause for just a moment and look around the room. Notice who's here with you today and recognize the breadth of experience, perspective, and leadership that's gathered here today in this space. We have students, entrepreneurs, business leaders, nonprofit partners, educators, and community builders, all here for one shared purpose: to explore what it means to build good business in a complex and rapidly changing world. At Weatherhead, and especially at the Fowler Center for Business as an Agent of World Benefit, we begin with a simple but powerful belief that business is not only a driver of economic value, it's a force that shapes communities, cultures, and futures. Today's organizations face unprecedented challenges: rapid technological change, environmental and social pressures, shifting workforce expectations, and growing uncertainty about what sustainable business truly looks like. Cleveland understands this deeply. This is a city with a long industrial legacy, a strong civic identity, and a history of people and institutions stepping forward to reinvent themselves again and again. While Cleveland knows challenge, it's also defined by resilience, collaboration, and a deep commitment to place. Many of the most meaningful examples of strength-based leadership we see today are happening right here, driven by organizations that choose to build on what this community already does well. Our work today is guided by appreciative inquiry, a strengths-based approach to leadership, change, and innovation. Rather than beginning with the question, what's broken, appreciative inquiry invites us to start somewhere else. What's already working, and how do we build from there? This approach begins with strengths, shared values, meaningful relationships, and opportunities for collaboration. It does not ignore challenges. Instead, it recognizes that sustainable change happens more effectively when we build from what gives life and energy to a system, rather than focusing only on what drains it. Over the past several decades, appreciative inquiry has been carried into organizations and communities around the world, from global corporations and healthcare systems to cities, classrooms, boardrooms, and policy spaces. Across all of these settings, one idea remains constant: the questions we ask shape the futures we create. And there's no better place to put this into practice than here in Cleveland. This region has faced economic shifts, industrial change, and moments of real challenge, and yet it continues to move forward by building on its own strengths. From advanced manufacturing and healthcare innovation to world-class arts, education, and deeply rooted community leadership, Cleveland has never lacked capability or creativity. What's happening here today reflects the core idea of appreciative inquiry. Lasting progress comes not from erasing the past, but from recognizing what has always been strong and intentionally designing the future around it. That is why today is not about theory alone, it's about practice. So why does this matter right now? Because many organizations today find themselves caught in familiar cycles. Cycles that appear productive on the surface, yet quietly limit what's possible. They focus on what's missing instead of what's working. They avoid risk rather than learning from it. They ask people to do more with less until burnout becomes normalized. And they rely on short-term fixes that address immediate problems without building long-term resilience. Over time, these patterns narrow how leaders see their organizations. They reduce creativity, they weaken trust, and they make it increasingly difficult to imagine a future that is genuinely better than the present. What makes this especially challenging is that these cycles often feel reasonable, even responsible. But when organizations remain there too long, they stop evolving. This is why appreciative inquiry matters. It offers a way to interrupt these patterns, not by ignoring challenges, but by shifting the starting point. By focusing attention on strengths, successes, and moments when people and systems are at their best, organizations open new pathways for innovation, engagement, and sustainable impact. And that shift in perspective is exactly what we will begin practicing today. Appreciative inquiry invites leaders to design with people, not just for them. See communities as assets, not obstacles. Recognize that innovation often lives at the edges, not just the center. And understand that purpose and performance are not opposites, they reinforce one another. A quick note about how today works best. This forum is not a passive experience. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to have the right answers. And you don't need to represent your organization perfectly. What does matter is curiosity, openness, and a willingness to engage honestly. Some of the most meaningful insights today may not come from the speakers on stage, but from the conversations at your table, or the questions you didn't expect to ask. Throughout the day, you'll be invited to reflect on moments when your organization or community was at its best. Listen deeply to others. Share stories, not just opinions. And imagine what might be possible if we intentionally designed for strengths, connection, and shared value. Thank you for being here, bringing your energy, and for being part of this conversation. Let's get started. So it's my honor today to kick things off by introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Nadya Zhexembayeva. Nadya is a globally recognized thought leader on reinvention, resilience, and sustainable transformation, work that could not be more relevant to the conversations that we're having today. Her research and practice challenge organizations to rethink how they grow, adapt, and lead in times of disruption, not by clinging to old models, but by intentionally designing for renewal. She's worked with organizations across industries and around the world, helping leaders move beyond short-term fixes toward long-term value creation rooted in purpose, innovation, and human-centered design. Her insights align deeply with the spirit of appreciative inquiry, focusing not on fear or scarcity, but on possibility, strengths, and the courage to evolve. Nadya is also a trusted voice within our academic and practitioner communities. We're especially grateful for her continued partnership with Case Western Reserve University, the Weatherhead School of Management, and the Fowler Center for Business as an Agent of World Benefit. Today, she'll invite us to think differently about reinvention, not as a one-time response to crisis, but as an ongoing leadership practice. So please join me in welcoming Nadya Zhexembayeva to the stage.
Thank you, my dear. Okay, so first of all, let's see who is in the room. Who is here a student? Good, 20%. Business owner. Great. Corporate, whether it's for-profit, non-profit, public employee. Excellent. A professional at the crossroads. Educator. Parent. Child. Hopefully everyone is awake. Good, everyone is awake. So we are all in children category. Great. Wonderful to meet you. Let me open up my slides and set this up. And I hope I will surprise you a little bit today with both my take on good business and my take on reinvention. But I'm honored to be back. I am a graduate of Case Western. I did my PhD right here at Weatherhead. My daughter was born on another side of the street in university hospitals. This is my home. I feel like coming home every time, and I'm honored you're spending this day with us. Now, Megan just said that it's not going to be about a lot of us talking and keynoting, and now I'm with you for a freaking hour. So we will make it as interactive as possible and as applied as possible so that this becomes a foundation of the whole day. Today is a unique opportunity. You're gonna firsthand experience an alternative methodology of change. You may not understand exactly what's happening, but there is a deep science-based design behind everything you will do today. And then later you can look back and say what actually happened and what was the methodology. And so you first will experience the methodology and then you will have a chance to reflect. How many of you have tried appreciative inquiry in the past? About half. How many of you have never even heard this term? That is the original AI. We have only one person in the room who hasn't. Good. So everyone is somewhere in between, but we all have different takes perhaps on it, and we will test it out. Good business. This is what we're here to talk about. And before I say anything about good business, I need to also first confess my sins, my biases. We all come with biases. I come with deep biases, and I want to make sure you know that they're here and not pretend that there is no elephant in the room when biases hit. So my biases come from the way I was born and raised. As you can hear by my accent, I'm not a US native. I was born and raised in the part of Soviet Union called Kazakhstan. And my relationship with change started long before I was born. About 100 years ago, late 1920s, early 1930s, the government of my country, Soviet Union, designed an artificial famine to kill a big portion of my population, and it successfully killed 40% of all Kazakhs in just 3 years. My great-grandfather survived the famine, but because he was a vocal opponent of the state, he was executed, and my grandfather, the only child, was shipped to an orphanage house in Russia. He never been to Russia, he never spoke a word of Russian, but he then grew up from age 14 in an orphanage house, went straight from the orphanage house to fight in the Second World War, and then came back from Kazakhstan. When he grew up in the 70s, he became a journalist, vocal opponent of the state, jailed, tortured in prison, and killed before I was born. So when I started my life, that was the bias in which I lived, which is you will have unimaginable disruptions happening in your life, and you will make it through. It will keep happening, and you will make it through. A few days ago, I got a beautiful email from a faculty member here, Julie, who is sitting here, and she said, you need to tell the story more often because your brain developed in that earlier than most people understand. And that is my bias. I cannot imagine why people cannot find a job because, my bias is towards all of your family will be killed and you will survive. And that is an unfair bias in a sense. But when I was just about coming of age, the Soviet Union collapsed. Now, most people don't understand that the collapse was completely unplanned. So imagine that we're sitting here in the US right now, and tomorrow on the front pages of newspapers, there is an announcement that the states, the 50 states, signed a dissolution of the agreement. That's what happened to us. Soviet Union was 15 states, 15 republics, and 3 republics, not all 15, just 3 founding ones. The presidents of those 3 literally, this is not a folktale, literally got drunk and dissolved Soviet Union without consulting anyone. The president of my country, Kazakhstan, was not among the 3. This was not planned. He was in the middle of the flight. He was warned by the associates that this is happening, and he was flying to prevent it. But there's about 6-hour flight between Kazakhstan and Belarus. So they signed before he landed. And he just turned around and went back. Because suddenly, you don't have a country, you don't have a currency, you don't have a single institution, police, medical, education, none of it exists anymore, and you need to start from scratch. So that is the second layer of my bias. As I was coming of age, my first job was at the age of 13 in an insurance agency because everyone I knew worked. Because you need to work to eat. So that is the shape with which I arrived here at Case Western Reserve in 2001, starting my doctorate here with one question. Why this happens? Why do systems die? Why would a country that seemed unshakable disappears overnight? Why would a company like Kodak or Nokia that seems to be on top of the world disintegrates in front of our eyes? Why would a community that is thriving today with economy and schools and hospitals becomes unlivable tomorrow? And why individual careers disintegrate in front of us? That's the question I started with exactly 25 years ago in an old business school building across the street where engineering school is right now. And I thought I had a good run. I honestly thought that I'm doing some good work. So I had many places to study. From 2001, tons of companies were disintegrating in front of my eyes, so I had plenty of research material and a huge graveyard to explore. I end up doing a lot of keynotes, doing projects with amazing people like the Queen of England, raising my kid who is just about to graduate from college, and doing all kind of fancy work. I wrote tons of books and got awards for those books. I worked with amazing companies all over the world, also in partnerships with some of the most amazing think tanks around the world, until I woke up one day and I realized that I absolutely miserably failed. It was about 2012. I was keynoting a conference on sustainability. And at the end of a conference, there are all kinds of speakers sitting at the dinner. There was an European Commissioner of Transport around the dinner. EU Commissioner is a minister of all EU. So it's one of the ministers that governs all 27 states, and she was at the table. There were a couple of venture capitalists and CEOs at the table. There are a lot of us scientists at the table. I was then a professor at the business school. And there was a person to my right who was in the investment side of EU who turned to me and said, "It's all nice, but do you actually have hope? Do you actually have hope?" And then conversation at the dinner shifted. Without the surface chit-chat, we all went around the circle. And each one of us gave data that we know, because we all come from different sides. And putting those pieces together, we realize that when it comes to fundamental issues facing humanity, whether it's monetary system that is on the verge of collapse and rethinking what money is, resource system, how much resources we still have inside our earth and how much is now outside of the surface and is in the form of trash mainly. How much resources we have in terms of stable climate, access to water, financial resources, social resources. We went all around the circle. And we all agreed that when it comes to fundamental disruptions, we no longer can prevent them. That this century, almost everything we were thinking about preventing will happen. We're too late. And I have a kid. At that point, she was in first grade in the Slovene school. And I was thinking there, this will be her century. And we missed the point, almost everything we could have prevented. So at that point, I made the decision that if prevention is not possible, there is a better option. If we can no longer prevent fundamental catastrophic climate change, we still have massive opportunity. If we can no longer prevent massive wars around resources and water, there is things we can do. If we can no longer prevent fundamental changes in the way monetary system or economic system is working, there are alternatives we can build. So when prevention is not possible, there is an alternative, and we'll talk about that alternative today. But before that, 2012 to right now, we started Reinvention Academy immediately after in 2014 to look at what can we do as an alternative. And it was very obvious through all of our research that my conclusion that I failed is very, very, very correct. It's supported by facts, and it's supported by facts today. So if we look even at just economic dimension, forget environmental and social and everything else, just an economic dimension, in the US, we are at the highest levels of bankruptcies across every size of business since 2010. This is the highest level of bankruptcy, whether we're talking about big corporation, mid-size, and small in business. But it's not just corporate environment. In US today, we're closing about one university per week. One university per week goes bankrupt in the US right now. When we look at the overall statistics in business environment, right now, most companies cannot survive a quarter of a century. So if you are still here, if your company have been in existence before 2000 and you're still here, you are statistically a minority. 52% of companies fell off the Fortune 500 list just since 2000 alone, over 90 since the foundation of the list. When we look at the underground economic viability of those businesses, this was a shocking number from Morgan Stanley, not from independent kumbaya researcher. Morgan Stanley says 60% of US public companies have never delivered value in economic terms, have never created value. And even if you are able to get to the peak of the industry, you cannot stay there for even 5 years. It was 77% of industry leaders that could hold the position at least 5 years. Now it's 44 and falling. This is also very visible in the way our employees are experiencing what's going on. So in just 2016, an average number of big transformation that an employee would experience in their organization was 2 per year. 2 plant transformations per year. Already in 2022, it was 10 plant transformations per year, and now it's even higher. So just on the plant side, this is a whole new IT system such as ERP, or a whole new organizational structure, or a new product portfolio, or a new entrance in the market, massive transformation, new organizational structure, massive transformations. We are now at the rate of about 1 plant transformation per month. Per month. And no wonder that our employees are completely done with this whole thing, because the support for the plant changes in corporations went from 74% of employees ready to change on average to now only about 43%. Megan promised you that we'll look at the strengths and positivity. I can see positivity in your faces right now. We will come out of it. The apocalypse now, part of this, will soon be over. But we need to look at facts, and we need to recognize that facts are friendly. These are friendly facts that are all pointing to a particular direction, which is there's a better way than this. And there is definitely a better way than the levels of engagement we've seen in 2025. So this is the latest Gallup research on the level of employee engagement. Last year, around the world, 21% of employees globally were engaged, thriving, happy to come to work. It's not necessarily like, oh, I can't wait to go to work on Monday. It's not like that. But in general, I'm excited about the work I'm doing. I feel positive and optimistic. Yes, I have stresses, but overall, I like it. 62% of employees globally are in a state of quiet quitting. That means they come to work for a check mark because they have a mortgage to pay, because they have nowhere else to escape. Ooh, can you please put stop there? That's all kind of positive, just the red, thank you. It's all kind of positive reminders that my phone does throughout the day. 62% of employees are in quiet quitting, but the number that is just shocking and grew by 2% in 1 year, 17% of employees globally are in a state of active sabotage. They're not stupid, they're not unethical, they're not unprofessional. They are in a state of sabotage because that's the most just, most fair thing they can come up with in response to what they're experiencing in the workplace. So you are entering into a business meeting and you're thinking of doing a strategy session. 62% of those people are not really there mentally, and 17 are there to sabotage your effort. That's true for boards as well. If any of you work with boards regularly, that's been my experience again and again. You're trying to progress, and there is at least one board member that will do everything for this not to go forward. Not because they're unethical, not because they're stupid, not because they're unprofessional. So clearly something is going on. Clearly the things we used to do and consider normal are not working. So there must be a better way forward. And that's where appreciative inquiry comes to place. Appreciative inquiry, simply put, is all about your data source. That's it. The easiest way I can think about is data source. Because most of the time, when we look at the data, let's say you're looking at sales data in your organization, or in case Western Reserve, student enrollment data, and there's some data coming in throughout the history. Most of the time, what do we do for strategic planning? We look at the data sources where we are at our worst. We start change when we have sales decline. So we're looking at the worst performing months, so worst performing days. Or I once worked with a bank, and he said, I have tons of reports. Every week, Monday, I start with a stack of reports on worst performing bank branches. And I asked him, where is the stack of reports on the best performing stack? Where's the best performing branches? So most of strategy, most of change, most of everything we do in business is tailored towards the sample of data at our worst. When sales are down, when supply chains are not working, when operations are underperforming, we have most amount of failures or quality issues in our businesses, and so on and so forth. And appreciative inquiry says, don't change the focus. If you want to work on sales, but start using the data around your best peak performing moments. Because the lessons here do not match with lessons here. The most surprising thing, the lessons here, what you learn about your organization, about the system you're trying to transform, at the bottom of its life, at the least aliveness, at the worst performance, does not match with what you learn here. You know that when you're organizing a party, you all can name me the list of worst things you can do at a party, how to fail at a party, how to kill a party. You can give me a list. But if you eliminate each one of those things on your list, it will still not guarantee the best party, because the lists don't match. Same in business. The list here and the list here does not match. And that's what appreciative inquiry is about. Can we reframe the focus? And that's what I did. After my big professional failure, after a decade of feeling proud of myself and writing books and walking on stages and waking up one day and saying, God, you shouldn't be proud because there's nothing to be writing home about. Look at these numbers. I changed the question. And instead of understanding why systems die, I wanted to understand not only how do they survive, but actually how do they thrive in constant disruption. Not just survive, but thrive. And those are two different states. Surviving and thriving are two different things. That's why the word sustainability is so difficult for me, right? We use such a big effort, marketing effort for decades to promote sustainability. Yeah? Now, let's test if that word is a word of thriving or surviving. So imagine that you moved to a new city and you came back to your original city, like I went to Little Italy yesterday, and you suddenly bump into a neighbor of yours that you haven't seen for a few years. And you hug and you're like, what's going on? How's life? How's everything? How's your marriage? Sustainable? Is that a word that represents thriving? Or is that the word that represents flourishing? Or is it something closer to surviving? I'm bearing this down, I cannot, but sustainable. So that's the question we have together. Not just how do we survive in the non-stop, complex, uncertain environment of today, but how do we actually thrive in it? Unapologetically, without struggling for hope. Thrive in it. And this is what we discovered as a global community of practitioners. We've now enrolled and educated just over 1 million people since 2014. The global reinvention community, and I'm so thankful few of you flew in from Carolina and from Washington and so on to be here. What we discovered, there's few fundamental shifts that are necessary if we want to go from surviving to thriving, and from researching the bottom, how do we not die, to the peak, how do we actually flourish in the world we're in, not pretending that there will be a different world, but living in this world. And I will share 3 things we discovered. There are many more than 3, but I'll share 3 as a way for us to frame this conversation and this work we're going to do together as an exercise in just a few minutes. So thing number 1, companies, organizations, communities, and countries that are able to thrive in disruption understand one thing, and they understand it not here, they understand it here. Turbulence is here to stay. It's the new normal. It's not gonna go away. How many of you still enter a meeting and you hear something like, when things stabilize, when things go back to normal, when we go back to business as usual? Yeah? Happened to you in the last 5 years? Most companies I know have been saying, when things normalize. How long have we been saying it? Since 2008. That's 18 years. There's no evidence whatsoever that we will stabilize. And when I say this, at different moments in the last 5 years, people thought I was saying different things. So first they thought I was talking about this. That, after this, things will stabilize. And then they thought 2 years later, the start of Ukraine war, and right after that, the Palestine-Israel war, they thought I talk about this. And then some were thinking that I'm talking about fundamental changes in weather, like big portions of Arizona becoming completely unlivable, and therefore every economic value that is in that area is now not only at 0, it's at minus. It's not just a loss, it's a massive, massive liability. Some think I'm talking about AI, and some think I'm talking about some dimensions of financial crisis or slowflation that we're experiencing right now. But let's check what I'm actually talking about. So if we just look at the economic crisis, let me check your gut reaction. How well you understand that turbulence is here to stay. How well you went from here to here. If you were to guess, if you know the answer, don't shout it out. But if you were to guess, without the use of ChatGPT or Google, this is not checking your Googling skills, just your gut reaction. How many economic recessions we had since 1988? And those of you who want a definition, I really need to turn that off. I'll find a way to turn it off. Thank you so much. So to remind you, the economic recession is a shrinking of economic output 20% or more. So economic output of Cleveland metro area shrinking by 20% or more, Cleveland is in recession. US, economic output shrinking by 20% or more, we're in recession. And we usually look at local, industry. I worked in mining as an executive for many years, mining recession of 2015-2016. Region, that would be just South America or just Asia is in the middle of recession, or global. So shout now, what would be your guess? How many economic recessions have we had since 1988? Just gut number. 10,000. Ooh, I really scared you. Okay. Go from here. Your gut reaction. You don't need to be correct. 35. 20. 6. Say it again. 190. 21st. First 5. So we're going from 5. I'll take 10,000 as a rare case. We're somewhere between 10,000 and 5, but closer to 5 and lower. Those of you who are closer to 5, 6. Those of you who are closer to 100. Okay, those of you who think it's significantly more than 100. There's 1 and the 2 who was 2, 3, around 10,000. So, just at the local level, so country level recessions, and this number is already quite outdated, just the country level recession, we had 469. If you add to this industry, region and world, we're at about 1 recession a week right now. Now you would ask me, why would I care that there is a recession in a place like Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo? They can have enjoyed their recession. Why would I care? Well, you feel that recession in a simple term, inflation. Democratic Republic of Congo is responsible for almost all of the world cobalt. And cobalt is what makes that phone that couldn't shut up small, because the battery is based on cobalt. The entire digital economy is based on cobalt. So when there is a war, as right now we have a flare of civil war in Congo and there is a recession in Congo, it means all of your supply chains are experiencing the increases in prices, volatility that all emerges in the form of inflation. How many of you are already experiencing some issues around supply and the prices of supplies? Whether as a human being buying stuff or as a company trying to source stuff. This is the recessions once a week. This is what you're experiencing. You might not feel that they're recessions, but they show up in your world in the form of volatility in supply chain and changes in the prices. Another question, disruptions. We just talked about economic, but let's talk about every other disruption: technological, AI and beyond, socio-economic in the form of wars, protests, and social unrest, consumer, everything else. What would be your guess? What's been the growth of disruption in the last 5 years? I'll give you a benchmark. So Accenture measures this in a global disruption index. It's now called Pulse of Change Index. And in 2016, they measured the previous 5 years, so 11 to 15, and globally, the level of disruption grew by 4%. That means your typical week became 4% more disrupted. You got a cancellation 4% more times. Your employee didn't show up to work 4% more often. Your flight didn't fly 4% more often. Every kind of disruption. What is your gut reaction? What's been the growth of disruption in the following 5 years? So 17 and 22. What would be your guess? 4% 5 years before. What was the next 5 years? 150%. 35%. Somebody else? 15%. Ask yourself, how more often is your life disrupted now than 5-10 years ago? 50%. The actual number is 200%. Here it is. This is the economic disruption, social, geopolitical, that's the start of the wars. Climate, we're seeing catastrophic climate events that make a whole bunch of areas around the world uninsurable. So you probably already know, if you have a plant or an entity in certain areas of US, you no longer can insure that. That means you need to relocate your plant and move your entire employee base with it. So climate change is not a political debate, is I cannot insure my plant, so I can no longer operate debate. That's climate right there. This is consumer pattern changes. Your consumers want blue and then they want green and they want orange and they want an apple and not your product altogether, right? And this is technological. Of course, the mass adoption of AI was 2022. So 200% growth in disruption. Now, how have your life changed? How have you adapted? How have you adapted to this new reality? Let's say scheduling, calendar. How many of you have changed the way you schedule your life based on the new world? How practically, what does it mean? What have you changed?
From paper calendar to everything's online.
Yeah, so from paper calendar to digital. Yeah? Somebody else, what's the new thing you're doing with a calendar?
I reserved Friday for looking at that. It was going to hit me.
Beautiful. So having preserved time to look at the incoming disruptions, great. Anybody else? Yes?
Looking at it as a grid, just the top to bottom, because it's a constant stream.
Yes, so it's not a grid, it's a different relationship with the stream of change that is happening. How many of you, yes? Yeah, so when something is changing in your neck of the woods, the whole ecosystem knows that everything has just shifted and they constantly have access. Yes?
Automation.
Yes.
You can have automatic reminders, things like that, events.
A lot of automation, so we are reminded when things change and so on. Now, most importantly, how many of you have allocated preserved time each week to deal things that are unpredictable? There's only 2 of you, 3. And that's the magic. If you know statistically correct, non-debatable, that it's a guarantee this week something unpredictable will happen, why do we keep running our calendars the way we ran them in 1997? We pack them up fully, all hours booked. Then, forgive my language, shit hits the fan. Then we cancel everything we planned for today, spend half an hour trying to reallocate just to repeat this dance tomorrow. We are working in the evenings and catching up on Sundays and Saturdays because we have not preserved time for unpredictable events. We do the same with our budgets. I had a long conversation, because I lived in Europe for 10 years, with EU on this subject. Why are you spending the entire budget and then spending most of February reallocating your budget because disruption hit when it's a guarantee to hit? Why don't you keep 20% of your budget unassigned so that you have free cash to allocate to new things you cannot predict? So when we're talking about disruption, it's not a theoretical exercise. We know you shifted when your practices are different, when you spend your time differently, when you spend your money differently, and when you organize yourself differently around the disruption that will come again and again and again. And now disruption is in a completely different reality. I love this word. This is my choice for the word of the year for 2026. It was coined by a wonderful futurist, Roger Spitz, last year. Metarruption, a family of disruption. Remember the beautiful concept of black swan? Talib's concept? An unexpected, completely unpredictable disruption. No, black swans now come in flocks. They lay eggs. Those eggs have babies. Those babies have babies. Ta-da, metarruption. A family of interrelated disruption. Because when one thing hits, there is no such thing. We keep thinking that there is such thing as environmental problem. Environmental problem. What is an environmental problem? Environmental problem is directly related to economic problem. Climate change means the economic viability of the entire region is no longer there, which automatically becomes a social problem, because what do you do with people who cannot sell their houses anymore because there's no value left in those houses? And that's a whole region. What are you going to do with that? There is no environmental or economic or social. There are meta problems that are families of interrelated problems that live in a world of metarruption, family of interrelated disruptions. That's the new normal. So that's the question for us. If we understand this, are we prepared? The International Monetary Fund has been measuring uncertainty for over 60 years. I was very gentle to you and I stopped right before COVID. So that's the chart before COVID. This is the level of uncertainty. A beautiful science behind it with the index. So every 1% increase is actually massive, massive rise in uncertainty. The most important part of this chart is not that things are becoming more uncertain. We all know that. The most important part of this chart is this part. Because this is the era where almost everything we use today in business, whether it's theory of strategy, theory of operations, theory of change, theory of HR, theory of marketing, theory of sales, almost everything we use was developed between late 70s and late 90s in the periods of highest certainty. Almost everything we teach in the classroom, almost everything we speak about in the media room, almost everything we use in a boardroom was developed for stable, predictable, low volatility environment. And it worked magically. But if you use the same theory of change, the same method of strategy, same method of operations today, it will kill you because it was designed for different purposes. How many of you still do traditional static budgeting? So at the end of a year, you develop a budget for the whole year. How many of you hate your budget by February? Because it's a tool designed for very stable and predictable world. I still remember the 90s, where you could sign a contract for fixed prices with your suppliers for 3 years. Who will give you fixed prices for 3 years today? Nobody. I still remember the time where you take the budget from last year at 3%, tada, you have a budget for this year. Now we're using a dead tool to try to wake a dead horse and asking ourselves, why is it not working? And the good news in the field of good business, what we used to call sustainable business, what we used to call triple bottom line, enough people wake up that the old methodologies are not working and we need new methodologies. My personal hero, we teach together occasionally, the father of sustainability, John Elkington, is one of the few professors in history that recalled his theory. He went to Harvard Business Review and said, I wrote triple bottom line, people, profit, planet. You all heard that phrase. Triple bottom line, people, profit, planet. He went all the way in 2018 back to Harvard and said, stop using this theory, it's outdated. It's not working. I recall my own theory. So it's time for us to recall theories that do not work and accept the reality in which volatility is new normal. Because good news, we have theories that do work, and appreciative inquiry is one of them. It's one of the theories and one of the methodologies that is excellent for high volatility environment because it uses the power of collective intelligence rather than 3 consultants in the back of the room that nobody has access to with a binder. That's how we used to do strategy in the 90s. That's why we have methodologies that are able to do dynamic budgeting, that can do different type of operations, different type of change management, and different type of strategy. So that's secret number 1. Let's see how am I in time. Secret number 2. Companies, communities, countries, and individuals that are able to live in this new brave world of meta-eruption are the ones who understand you cannot wait until things are broken. You must break things before they reach the broken stage. And what do I mean by that? Every living system has a life cycle. In business, we go from startup to growth to maturity, and if nothing happens, decline. This also happens in human life. So if you measure push-ups, at birth, the baby can do no push-ups. At maturity, max amount of push-ups, and then in the elder age, the push-up numbers decline. Same in your brand, same in your skill set, right? Your skill set reaches the peak, and if you don't do anything, it starts going in decline, and your skills are no longer relevant. Everything is a life cycle. Your brand, your product, your team, your processes, everything have a life cycle. Good news, we don't need to wait into decline, we can reinvent. So reinvention is jumping the growth curve. If you're in strategy theory, this is called S-curve. So if you're Googling, S-curve is just because it resembles a letter S kind of slanted to the side. Reinvention is jumping the growth curve. So I finish one and I find a new one and I ride the change to the new S-curve and new S-curve and new S-curve indefinitely. But what we discovered, and what most organizations and communities still don't understand, is that if you start reinventing on the decline, chances of you reaching back to your own historic peak are only 10%. What does that mean? So this is your current cycle. This is your peak. If you measure it by net profit, EBITDA, whatever is the number you measure in your company, in non-profit, it can be total revenue, so it can be some other parameters. It can be customer base, whatever you're using, and this is your peak. If you start reinventing on the decline right here, chances of you, I don't have red, so I'll do blue, coming back to your own historic peak are only 10%. At that time, economic resources are already tight because when you're jumping an S-curve, you are using the money and resources from the existing reality to feed the new S-curve. You need to allocate resources to innovate and test and experiment. You need human beings who are available and their brains that are able to think creatively. You need political resources, social resources, physical resources, and everything in between. So when we are in decline, resources are already shrinking. We cannot allocate enough resources. Emotionally, we're shrinking, and you all know from neuroscience, when we're in stress, what happens to our ability to be creative? It goes down rapidly because the capillaries, this is not about psychology, this is about biology. Our blood capillaries shrink by about 75%. We literally have not enough blood in our brain to be creative in the middle of crisis. So we cannot come up with new ideas, and the bad ideas we come up with, we don't have enough money and time and people to test. So the 10% rule means I need to reinvent before I reach the peak. I need to break things before I reach the peak. But here's two problems. If I do it too early, what happens?
Lose focus.
You lose focus, yes. What else? If I do it too early, what happens to your organization? What happens to your team if you start reinventing when it's just getting formed? Yeah, they get demoralized, absolutely. And the entire system is not yet ready. Remember, Apple had a tablet in the 90s. The system was not ready. Internet was not ready. The army of coders who created all the apps for all of our iPads were not ready. Nothing was ready. The tablet itself was ready. It was economic disaster for the company, just waste of money because it was too early. So you cannot be too early and you cannot be too late. That means our job is to have a system that allows us to notice the golden moment on time. And then we're faced with the second problem. I come to a company that is climbing, that is trying to reach the peak, that is fighting for their place. And I come to all of you and say, and now we reinvent. What do you say back? What do you say back? Don't be polite. It's morning. Let's wake up. What do you say back? Be honest. We don't have any capacity. What are you talking about? We're busy. What else? It's working. Why in the heck would you touch what is working? What else? I'll tell you what my miners told when I flew to Africa and stood in the pit. They said, are you smoking something in Amsterdam? Well, our headquarters were in Amsterdam. Are you smoking? Are you on drugs, people? What? Are you crazy? Are you on drugs? And then a lot of cuss words, right? So we have a problem. We cannot jump the S-curve if we don't prepare and we don't engage our community, our ecosystem, and our employees. And that's why appreciative inquiry is such a beautiful tool, because it allows a whole system engagement, so you are not pushing against the current and resistance of your employees. You're co-creating the new future while creating a joint reinvention mindset and a joint reinvention culture in which you can be prepared anytime the next disruption hits. So that's the essence of the second rule. We have to start breaking things before they're broken, deliberately, proactively, and with a lot of optimism. And that means you need to know when that moment is for your company. And that moment is very unique. You need to reinvent every maybe 3-4 years, and I need to reinvent perhaps every year. So the question becomes how often? And this is where we started doing research at Reinvention Academy. And we discovered that for most of the history of recent capitalism, so most of the 20th century, the average life cycle of a typical business was 75 years. Meaning you could milk the same cash cow without significant changes for 75 years. Lyle is here from a wonderful company, Clark, President's Award for Green Chemistry and many, many other amazing things. I'm sure for decades the company could have continued without massive change that you introduced now when things started getting more volatile. So 20th century, 75 years, do the same thing forever. 1989, two things happen. Internet becomes public, and the fall of Berlin Wall is the beginning of true world supply chain build. We are now not competing with our own country or your own region. We're now an integrated economy through World Trade Organization and other mechanisms. And suddenly, we go from 75 on average to about 15 on average. But remember, I found the red market. We don't have the whole 75. We have only half of the cycle. So reinventing about every 30 to 40 years to suddenly reinventing every 7 years. What do you think is the number now? How often are we reinventing in 2026? Once a quarter, yes. Once a quarter. Somebody else, how often? In your industry, how often? How often? Say it louder. Absolutely. So in your industry, whatever your industry in, if you're in consulting, how often do you reinvent?
13 months to every 3 months.
Every 3 months now, yeah? In education, how often do you think universities are reinventing now? Many of you are in education. Every 3 years, yeah? In the manufacturing, how often do you think companies are reinventing? Not every year, absolutely. About every year? About. So here, of course, we talk about everything from incremental to radical reinvention, but the averages that we've discovered are about this far. So red is reinventing every year or less. That would be fast-moving consumer goods. That would be high-tech. Everything, of course, right now AI-driven, and everything close to consumer, that would be red, reinventing every year or less. So now every 5th company in the world is reinventing every year or less. Some every few months. Yellow is every 2 to 3 years. That would be retail, that would be banking, finance, services, including insurance, healthcare would be in the yellow category. Blue, that would be manufacturing. We're in the Rust Belt right here, so it's very important for us. That's every 4 to 5 years. Green, 6 to 10 years. That's extractive industries, including mining and oil. And brown, that would be monopolies and government-owned businesses. There's no companies that are reinventing at the rate that we used to see in the 20th century. Even the fastest ones that were there in the 20th century are now very slow. So in this century, most of us are over 50% are reinventing faster than every 2 to 3 years. That's your suppliers, that's your customers, that's your competitors. And if you are not building a system that allows you to keep up that pace, you will be out of business very, very quickly. That means the third rule, when that is the volatility in which we're in, and this is what I hear a lot. I had a conversation with an 18-year-old in Serbia a couple of years ago. And he asked me after a lecture, Nadya, reinventing every 2 to 3 years, that's crazy. Does it mean that we need to reinvent our value system every 2 to 3 years? Does it mean that we need to reinvent our mission every 2 to 3 years? Does it mean that we need to reinvent our traditions every 2 to 3 years? And here is the remarkable thing that we are not paying enough attention to, both in academia and in business. It actually means the opposite. The only way you can deal with this amount of external volatility is when there is incredible internal cohesion. Incredible internal cohesion. It means constantly realigning, bringing the entire employee base into alignment and excitement and hope, having a common language, having a clear sense. And visually, the way I think about it is that not only we need to think about change management, which is each S-curve is a change management process, but we need to invest massively into continuity management. What is the red thread that connects everything? How everything continues? How do we not throw the baby with the bathwater? How do we build on our strength, not ignore them altogether and start from scratch every time a new disruption hits? Because when COVID hit, we started from scratch. When digital hit, we start from scratch. AI hit, we start from scratch. Generation Z hit, forgive me, Generation Zers, you didn't hit us. We were surprised. My daughter still surprises me on a weekly basis with the way she thinks about the world. We're like starting from scratch. We don't need to start from scratch. We have wonderful methodologies that allow us to keep the red thread, to connect past to present to future, to keep the strengths and build on them rather than ignore them and only concentrate on weaknesses. And the work around red thread is so fundamental because change management, we finally won that battle. Change management is a new discipline. It's just about formally 30 to 40 years old. We were selling change management heavily. We sold it. Now it's time to start working on continuity management to go hand in hand with change management. So what does that mean? This is one tool I want you to do very quick exercise with. It means change management is the vertical. Are we managing today? The priorities of today, the urgent things, that's your vertical. Succeeding today or failing today. The continuity is tomorrow. Are you investing enough in making sure that tomorrow is still there, that you have customers who have money to pay you? So if you don't invest in some sort of community development and you don't tend to the fact that you have a thriving community, you'll have not customers that will pay you tomorrow. And are you investing in resources? And are you investing in water and clean air? And are you investing in other things? So that's tomorrow. This is today, this is tomorrow. Vertical is change management, horizontal is continuity management. So where do we not want you to find yourself is in a minus, killing today and destroying tomorrow. That's what I call Titanic syndrome. It's when organizations kill themselves, like Titanic did, by not noticing iceberg on time, by being arrogant that we're too big to fail, too protected to fail, too necessary to fail. This is the minus, when we destroy both today and tomorrow. Thankfully, most companies are not there. Most organizations and communities are not there. Where most of us are here, blind idealism. We're building tomorrow without rooting in today. Or even more so, most of us are in firefighting, which is fixing and saving today at the expense of tomorrow. Fixing short term at the expense of any kind of future long term. How many of you seen a company that is in stress and it cuts down all education efforts and lays off its best people? In 2 years, not only you don't have the employees you need, or sometimes in a year, nobody will hire, nobody will go with you again because you will lay me off in half a year. So that is a typical firefighting. We fix short-term problem at the expense of a much longer sustainability and beyond, thrivability, flourishing for your business. So where do we want us to be? We want to find ideas that allow us to do a win-win. We are investing in today, we're creating a solution that is win-win. Now, are we always in the peak of that? So is it always, I found an idea that is right here, the highest level for today and highest level for tomorrow? Absolutely not. Sometimes it's hugely for today, right? But just a little bit for tomorrow. And sometimes it's massively for tomorrow and just a little bit of a benefit today. And sometimes it's somewhere in between. So we often talk about a portfolio, a diversified portfolio approach. But at least you have that filter. And at least you're honest with ourselves. Are we moving chairs on a Titanic with this effort, this committee, this 2-hour meeting we just had? Are we moving chairs on Titanic, or are we actually creating a win-win? And our goal today for this session is learn practices that allow us to align towards win-win. Very quick exercise. Get yourself a piece of paper and ask yourself, a typical week, last week was right after vacation, maybe doesn't count, but a typical week. Take 100% of your time. Which quadrant did you spend in? Just 100%. Maybe you spent 10% in Titanic syndrome and 20 or 30 or 15 firefighting, and maybe 13 blind idealism and a little bit in reinvention. Just assess your typical week. Where do you spend your time? Give yourself a second. This is very theoretical, but just a gauge. I'll give you a minute.
between reinvention and Titanic.
Between reinvention and Titanic, that's very often happens. Actually, another thing that often happens, it's firefighting and blind idealism jumping. So I am firefighting, I'm so fed up with it, I just need to think big and do something, and then I'm in big and doing something, and the problems keep accumulating, so I'm thrown back into firefighting. So those are very typical jumps. Spread your percentages. Just give yourself, I'll ask you the next step, so write down your percentages. Just approximate, this is a gut reaction, we're not doing scientific research here. Just 10, 20, 30, however you want to spread your 100% of your week. What is your typical week like? And now next to the numbers you wrote, put the numbers you would like to see in the next 2 months. What would be your ideal spread? Where do you, and by the way, there's no wrong quadrant here. For example, if you are in customer service, you will naturally be in firefighting more. This is your job. So this is not a statement of doing something wrong. Certain functions have a different vicinity. If you are in corporate restructuring, dealing with crisis, you will be in Titanic syndrome for others nonstop. So it's not a jump into conclusions. Good. And now take that phone of yours, find, today's January 13th, so find March 13th and add to the calendar a total matrix audit. Just add to that. When that beeps, you will be very confused and you will be, what do I mean? And then you will add to that calendar a picture of your assessment that you did on a piece of paper. Just snap a picture, add it to a calendar, and you will compare the notes between January and March. If you do this exercise at least 3 times, our research shows that you will significantly start moving towards your desired outcome. What we measure gets managed. So the moment you start aiming to measure it and say, I want to spend more time in this quadrant, I want to spend less time in this quadrant, you will see dynamics. So I'll give you a second to add this. And add it in your calendar, please, because you will be confused on March 13th. Yes, Julie? Oh, yeah. The reason it's Toto, it's today, tomorrow. We called it today, tomorrow matrix, and then the community just started calling it Toto matrix, and that's how it became Toto matrix. It's called today, tomorrow matrix. Okay? So first thing we do, yeah, if we are dealing with the reality that internal cohesion is necessary, first thing we do, we find simple tools that allow us to online and choose and make decisions with the same language, whether it's this framework or any other framework. Second thing that is crucial about internal cohesion is understanding the dynamics of change in a typical population. And the wonderful tool here is the Rogers Law of Diffusion of Innovation. How many of you know this law? Yeah, a couple of you know. So this is from 60s, I think 1967, and this is what this framework suggests. In a typical population, about 2.5% are innovators, people who come up with breakthrough ideas, disruptive new solutions. Let's do things completely different. Let's come with a new product. Let's enter a completely different market. Let's go to a smartphone. 2.5%. Then we have about 13.5% who are early adopters. Who are early adopters? These are people who may not necessarily come up with a smartphone, but they will sleep outside of an Apple store to buy the smartphone. They are risk takers. They're ready to test things out. They're up for something new. And here's the thing we don't understand about them. We think they follow the innovators. So they're buying a smartphone because they like Steve Jobs. That is not supported by data. What they love is their own identity as a first mover. So they buy new things, not because the phone is good or Steve Jobs is good, but because I am the first person in my neighborhood to have a smartphone. And the entire neighborhood will ask me to show it to them. And I am the first person who have a very crappy flat screen TV that costs $10,000. Because the entire neighborhood and all my relatives will come in to play with the buttons. So it's about my identity, not about the product. This will be very important in 2 seconds. It's about my identity, not about the leader. Then we have 34% early majority, 34% late majority, and then we have laggards. Laggards are people who still have rotary phone. Do you know at least somebody? Well, first of all, Gen Z, do you know what rotary phone is? Yes, good. Half of you know. Rotary phone is that strange looking device with a circle in the middle that you move around and it calls. There's a whole different exercise to make you figure out how to dial on that call, but we won't test you today. So rotary phone is what we used to have up until about 2000s. Do you still know anyone who has a rotary phone? Yeah, typical laggards, people who just, they won't move until it's physically impossible not to move, because you still can buy a rotary phone. Now, typical mistakes we make during alignment, and that's why appreciative inquiry is such a beautiful exercise. Here's 3 typical mistakes we make when we try to align and rally the troops around reinvention. We as leaders understand that change is necessary. How many of you right now in your work know that something needs to be changed, but it's not yet changing? Yeah, 100%, right? We all have something. We know this is not working. We know we need to start doing something different, but we're not moving. So if we want our system to move, and this is our 2.5, this is our 13.5, this is our early majority, this is our late majority, and this is our laggards. What most don't still follow, and this is from social science, political science, is that for the system to flip, we typically need somewhere between 20 and 25% of a system. So I will be on a safe line and I will call it 25%. If you want to read about this, there's an excellent book called The Chasm or The Great Chasm. If you're just in Amazon and type chasm in books, you will see the book. Crossing the chasm, maybe. Yeah. So this is this threshold, the chasm. So typical mistakes. Mistake number 1, we pay disproportionate attention to laggards, to protesters, to arsonists, to people who say, no, we're not going to do it. We've always done it this way. And they will not move. It's not in their neurological makeup. So spending time trying to rally them up is irrelevant. Unless they're literally sabotaging, leave them alone. They're actually a good, healthy sign. We're not a sect. We want healthy opposition. We want somebody to say, I'm against it. So nothing wrong with them, but you do not need to spend time there. Second typical mistake. You are the one who wants the change. You are the innovator. And you are hanging out with your early adopters because it's safe and fun and they get you. And they understand you and it's safe with them. But spending that much time with them, they're already converted. You're wasting your time and it's not moving the needle. The third typical mistake is spreading your attention evenly. How many of you do big communication rollouts and cascades and all of that, right? When we're trying to engage the whole employees through sessions and PowerPoint slides and something else that we're trying to move the whole organization. Does not work. What works? What we actually need to focus on, this is you, this is your early adopters, they will follow you anyways. The only group you need to aim for is this group. Because once you reach 25%, they will flip automatically. I often, in my country, we are nomadic country and we eat, forgive me, horse meat and other meats, a lot of meats. So I always joke in Kazakhstan, the moment 25% of Kazakhs become vegetarian, the whole country will become vegetarian, and then everyone laughs. It looks like a big number, but it's an impossible number to reach in Kazakhstan. So the moment 25% of a population has smartphones, the whole population has smartphones. The moment 25% eat vegetarian, the majority, 90, statistically speaking, the whole population starts becoming vegetarian. The moment 25% of women start wearing pants, all women start wearing pants. That's just a populational growth and development. So you don't need these people, you already have them. And you don't need these people because you only need to get to the 25%, which means you only need about 9 to 10%. And if you engage them and truly engage them in a place like this, a diverse group of people sitting together and planning together, if you truly engage them, they will pull the whole system forward. And you don't need to do any heavy lifting because they don't trust you anyway. These people do not trust these people. These people don't buy from Steve Jobs. They buy from their neighbor Peter, who showed them the first smartphone. They buy from their sister and their cousin and their co-worker, not from Steve Jobs. So all we need is just this sliver. And that's why the new methodologies work so well. Because you can bring that community into the room, you can engage them, you can co-create with them, and you can finally deliver the internal cohesion that can stand in balance to external volatility. And that's the rule and the secret number 3. And that's exactly what this forum is about. So today, there will be very few long speeches after this. I'm done. Are we good? We survived? Do we feel hopeful? Good? Good? So what we're gonna do today, we're gonna go through the dynamic of appreciative inquiry 4D process, so that you can experience how you can engage. And by the way, you can do it in your family. You don't need 50, 100 people in a room. You can have 3 people in a room and repeat the same process, planning your next Christmas, and I guarantee it will be a different Christmas if you want to reinvent your Christmas. So we will go through the process. We will learn a little bit about the new methodologies. We'll try imagining what's possible. And most importantly, we'll discover that we are excellent at reinvention. We are all born reinventors. Those of you who remember your babies, unless there's a tragic health issue, every baby is a reinventor. The baby doesn't need a bonus to start walking. The baby doesn't need precise agenda. They're great at uncertainty. Babies fall again and again, and after 100 falls, they don't sit down and say, I'm not gonna walk again. There's just not in this lifetime, not for me. No, they keep trying and trying until they walk. So we're great at this. We just need to give up our attachment to the idea that stability is somehow better than change. Because in organic systems, look at nature, the tree at the end of October in Cleveland does not hold to its leaves and says, I'm not giving up my leaves. I spent the whole spring and summer growing those leaves. I am not giving up. Nature lets go. Nature reinvents. Nature grows new. And that's exactly what we are to do here. With that, I pass it on back to Megan, and thank you very much. Oh, are there questions?
Does anybody have a couple questions? You can take a couple questions for Nadya if anybody has questions.
Yes. And in the meantime, take a couple of notes for yourself. We tend to pretend that we learn from experience. So we just experience something together here for an hour and we learn from it. Absolutely, we do not. If we did, we would only do an experience once and forever be able not to repeat that experience. We learn from reflecting on our experience and absorbing the learnings. So experience itself is not enough. We need the reflection. So take a few minutes, jot down the notes, reflect on your experience in the last hour. If you take one actionable idea into your own work, we've done our job. Just one reflection, one actionable idea, that's enough. And I'll give you a second and then we'll ask the first question. Don't just experience, reflect on your experience. There's a beautiful, beautiful method that originated right here at Case Western, which is, of course, David Kolb's experiential learning, who teaches you exactly that. Experience itself is not enough. You need to go through the cycle of reflection and then abstraction and then putting it into practice. Okay.
Hi.
Yes.
I'm a flourishing consultant.
We already reinvented. I'm a flourishing consultant. I love that.
And a student here at Case. And I'm really interested in your thoughts about how we identify that 9%. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that people are necessarily aware of where they fit on that curve.
Yes.
And as a leader in a business, when I think about my own company, I want to know who those 9% are so that I can engage them appropriately, frequently, and fully.
Yeah. So in every organization I work with, including the company where I had as a head of transformation, the mining company, it was 100,000 employees at the time when I started. It was actually a massive effort to create a pool of the golden 10% and tend to that pool. So we used different methodologies. Of course, we asked people to nominate who in your vicinity, regardless of the status, it doesn't need to be a boss or a secretary, it doesn't matter. Who in your vicinity is a go-getter? Who in your vicinity is a person who jumps on your ideas? Who in your vicinity is a person who is up for something new? When you suggest who's up for something new, so we would create a database and we will create special events for them. For example, once a month we would hold a breakfast for them, or we will do something that we can start building a community around those people. So that's one way to identify. And to be deliberate as a beginning stages of your engagement with that client, or those of you who are in corporate environment, you want to start something this year. First, get a regular community built around this. And these are people who, and it doesn't need to be around sustainability, around anything. Who is the person who usually thinks of how to reorganize the office to make it better? Who is the person who suggests a different way to do meetings so we're done wasting our time? Who is the person who reads books and shares? So that's the makeup we are looking for. And we then tend to that. It becomes a strategic initiative. That is your golden reserve. And then, of course, I do suggest Crossing the Chasm, probably the book. It's an orange cover. I'm very bad with, I just remember by color. So it's an orange cover with this visual on top. It's a great, great book. There are other methodologies you can use, but most of the time we start with interviews and nominations. You can have a Google form or SurveyMonkey form for people to nominate somebody like that anonymously. And then you can also look at some of the more HR statistic. Who is performing better? So usually these are people who are kind of hungry and alive and want to get things done. And also anything from 360 or other reviews, who is people relying on in the office because they will go extra mile. So you can look at the HR metrics that can give you, and then just nominations bottom up. Great question. Yes.
So I really appreciate the idea of collaboration and inclusion. And I think that that's kind of how I've gone about change management. I think I would love to hear your input on when a system continuously is changing, right? If you look at the rate of disruption and the human capacity to accept and, integrate that change, it would seem that we're kind of creating consistently a backlog of change. And so I've been surprised and somewhat disheartened by how many times now I have people who are like, can you just tell me what to do? Like, I don't want to be included. I don't want to be a part of a process. I am fatigued from all of the backlog of change. And here there's more and there's more and there's more. And so I'd just be curious to hear what you say about that.
Yeah, so we'll think of how to give you a link, maybe as a follow-up when I send you the slides. Megan will send you the slides. I'll send you a couple of links. I wrote an article for Harvard Business Review on this issue specifically, and it's examples of what to do. And one fundamental issue is our psychological contract with our employees. So the contract we were in for decades is you change for me and I leave you alone for a few years. Right? That was the contract. In a long cycled world, that was the contract. You do this big jump for me and I will leave you alone for a few years. In the world where we were reinventing every 20, 30, 40 years, that was deliverable contract. I could have done that. But we have never recontracted with our employees, ever. Most companies I know of never did the work of creating a new psychological contract, which is change will happen on a regular basis. Nothing I can do about it, nothing you can do about it. New regulation will come. New president administration will come and everything will change. New competitor will come. New weather disruption will come and our trucks will get strangled somewhere. New technology will come, AI or whatever else. I cannot promise you not changing, and you can pretend it's possible. You will only create more and more tension towards yourself and more pain. So it's our work to recontract. What does it physically look like? Sometimes we do workshops in which we create discussions. So very simple exercise you can do with your team to recontract is use the data from this talk or from this forum, or we will send you some videos, short video that will give them a brief, and then have a discussion. That really is not visible. What were the rules of the game in our industry, in our function, when the cycle was 75? And what are the new rules when the cycle is 3? Let them recontract with you. This is our new reality, so how should we run? What should be the competencies we pay attention to? What should be our meetings like? What should be our processes like? But that work on recontracting with employees were not done. And therefore, in the eyes of typical employee, we are constantly breaking our contract. We are breaking our promise. Because we didn't do a deliberate work of resetting the rules of the game. They believe they're playing old rules. We have no options but play new rules. So we are the bad guys and sabotage is at 17%. And it's on us to reset the rules. And that doesn't happen in one conversation. This is ongoing. So what do? In all staff meetings, we have a one slide. Remember how with safety, you have a safety reminder of some sort in every meeting? The same with reinvention. You have a high disruption reality reminder every meeting. So here's a statistic this week. And this is the statistic. So you take a piece of data from report. We'll send also other resources for you. But you take one piece of data and remind, this is the new reality in which we're in. How do we operate in it? So it takes a little bit of time, but we have to resettle that. Otherwise, most employees will be in, don't engage me, I don't have the capacity to do it, because they don't. In their current model, that's one problem, is psychological contract. The second problem is we're pretending we're changing things when we're not. I had a rant on LinkedIn. Imagine I went on LinkedIn, put the button live and ranted for like 40 minutes after a client meeting a couple of years ago. So I was in a client meeting and they heard me and we worked and all of it. And they're like, Nadya, we heard you. Our budget process is no longer 3 months. It's now 4 weeks, 2 weeks, some in weeks. It's no longer 3 months, it's just a few weeks. I said, great. Which of the 200 steps you eliminated? And they're like, we did not. We just do them now in 3 weeks. And you're wondering your employees are all quitting on you? What? So we pretend we change. We didn't change anything because things that worked in a stable environment are literally killing us in a diverse environment. I'll give you an example. Supply chain management. Just in time, right? Remember just in time, amazing Japanese idea. Don't keep things in the inventory. Deliver them just in time you need them on a production floor. Excellent idea in stable environment. Beautiful. In the volatile environment, remember COVID-19 and all parking lots in car sales were empty because one thing was missing, the chips? It was wonderful in a stable environment. It kills you in a volatile environment. So we need to fundamentally rethink the processes rather than, so centralization was beautiful in volatile environment. Produce in one place, ship globally. In a stable environment. In volatile environment, it kills you because once something gets disrupted, remember one ship stopped in a canal? Remember we had a ship that got stuck in one canal and all grocery prices went up by 10% because that one ship stopped everything? That means decentralization is actually more sustainable in volatility than centralization. So one thing is contract, but second thing is process reengineering. We cannot pretend that we can just keep doing the same thing, just faster. We cannot. With that, I will stop. I know we're over time.
That's okay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Go for it. Let's just give Nadya one more round of applause. She not only talked about reinvention and appreciative inquiry, but also about learning styles. So all of my favorite things. So now it's time for me to turn things over to you. So we're going to go on a journey together for the rest of the day, which includes discovery, dreaming, designing, and then thinking about our destiny and moving forward. So all of you have today a companion, and if you haven't gotten a chance to pull this workbook out of your swag bag that we've given you, you can find it in that bag, and this workbook is going to help guide you through the things that we're going to do for the rest of the day. It has all of the information and questions and text and places for you to write in there as we move through the day. So we are going to kick this off by doing a little bit of what we call discovery. And we're going to do some discovery around the idea of good business. So moments when strong performance and positive impact have reinforced one another. And so in this first kind of section, what we're moving into, I'm going to ask you to talk to somebody that you're seated next to. And if you have an odd number of people at your table, you can either do this in a group of 3, or someone can find, another odd number of people at a table. But I'm going to ask you to do some paired interviews. And beginning on page 13 in your workbook, I have those questions laid out for you. So there are 4 questions. And for the sake of time and being able to turn things over to you, I'm not going to in detail read all of the beautiful text that I have written for you and put into this workbook describing good business. But the first question is about what we can learn from moments when good business became a force for shared good. And I want you to share a high point story, a high point moment when you've experienced good business in action. Think about what made this moment a high point and consider what this story reveals about you as a leader or a change maker. Then I want you to think about what strengths must guide us as we design the next era of good business. Think about what are those enduring strengths that need to remain, and what are some emerging strengths that you see in this space. Then I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes and envision the future. So what does the next era of good business look like? And we're going to dive more into this in another section, but thinking about, what does the future of good business really look like? And then finally, kind of turning good business from aspirations into action. So what are some small things that can be done now? And what are some bolder, longer term things that can be done in order to make this a reality? And so how we're going to work for the next hour or so is that you're going to find a partner, or like I said, a group of 3. You're going to do these peer interviews. So they're going to be pretty quick. I'm only going to give you about 20 minutes for your interview, which means about 10 minutes per person speaking for 4 questions. I know that's a lot, but we're here for one day together. I only have you for one day. Then I'm going to ask you to, and I'll keep track of time, so no worries. You don't have to do that yourself. I'm going to ask you to share among your table. And share some of the themes that came up, share some of the stories that came up. And then we're going to take a few minutes at the end of this section before we take a break to do a few report outs and hear from some of the tables about some of their thoughts on these different questions. As you tell your story to your partner in your paired interview, think about, what happened, what really made that story a high point for you, and why did that really matter to you? And as you listen to your partner, make sure that you're listening for the strengths that were present, choices or actions that you see that have made a difference, and relationships or conditions that really supported that success. So like I said, here's this timing. I'm going to give you 20 minutes to find a partner and go through these interview questions, or as far as you can get in 20 minutes. Make sure that you, 10 minutes, go through your story and your answers to the questions, 10 minutes for the other person, or you can do it question by question. And then I'll come back up here and give a few more instructions as we move into our table discussion. The questions that you're going to go over in this first 20 minutes are on pages 13 through 16 in your workbook. And so I look forward to everyone and getting to meet new people in this room and having really nice conversations. And so you'll see on page 17 where there are some roles that you can assign to people at your table: discussion leader, recorder, timekeeper. Again, I will keep time, and in 20 minutes, we'll have a chance to share. Then on pages 18 through 21 in your workbook, there's places for you to take notes so that you can take notes about some of the themes that are coming up in these table discussions that you're having as you're talking about these questions. I also, at this point, invite you, if you like, should you feel feel so moved. In front of every table, there is a flip chart. And if you want to take notes that way and use the Sharpies and the Post-its and your flip chart to take notes, I invite you to use those as well, if that feels good to kind of record and let everybody see what you're working on. So I'm going to give you 20 minutes to discuss as your table and to share some of your answers to these questions, and hear the answers from other people and think about some of the common themes that are emerging. Okay, so I know that was another really fast 20 minutes. But I'd love it if we could share with the whole group now some of the things that you discussed at your tables, whether those are some of your high point stories, moments of good business in action, some of the strengths and values that you found, some of the common themes. Is there a table that would like to go first? My wonderful MBA student, Delisa, here has the mics, and she'll run them around and give you a mic to share. Love it. Thank you, Nathan, in the back.
Sure.
Then there's one up here, Delisa. So we'll start back there, and then we'll go up here.
Hi, so we'll start.
Nathan, why don't you stand?
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Great to be here. So we started with looking at a couple of those specific moments that stood out as good business done right. Tim, who just stepped out, is talking about where the Rust Belt Riders, I think I got that right, finding sustainability through a connection with Heinen's. Catherine talking about the gay games and how inclusive they were, building a big partnership with a deep economic impact, which then opened up, set the stage for future additional big events, including Special Olympics coming to Cleveland in 2030. I talked a little bit about upstate New York festival that paired artists with healthcare providers to be able to get health quality of life connections going in both directions, where artists were brought to an economically depressed area to be able to apply their trade in art, but receiving free healthcare in return for it. And in doing so, I just went back to the area this past holidays, that there's now a map to be able to go to all the different murals that are now populating, beautifying the city, while also driving a deep economic revival in the area as well. And then Upcycle Parts Shop, being a graduate of Sea Change, where they're collecting scraps to provide a community for the fodder for arts and crafts. Some of the common themes that we were able to touch about, because 4 questions in 20 minutes wasn't nearly enough, but we did talk about how to
I know,
make
it's
fast. What are the metrics that we need to have to actually be able to capture the value of all of what we're talking about here? The statistic that was brought up during Nadya's presentation around over 60% of the companies not actually delivering value is certainly startling. That in and of itself, it also begs the question, are we actually measuring the right thing when it comes to determining whether or not we're delivering value? And looking at all the different things that we were talking about, there was certainly a social component along with an economic component. What sorts of metrics do we need to be able to actually capture both that qualitative and quantitative simultaneously, the idea of value? So it was really interesting. So,
Wonderful. Thanks for going first. I appreciate it.
Everyone. Our table mates, I wish everyone could have heard. Some of the core elements of stories that were shared here focused on inclusivity and compassion, trust, urgency, agreement on requirements and goals. And in one case, there was a common executive level training on appreciative inquiry and how that works and why it matters. We also identified that knowing your audience was a very important element of a success story here. In that example, is it the right thing to do? Worked for one customer, but another customer needed to hear something along the lines of pay less now or pay more later. Better decision-making was fueled by better information and also recognition of some individual effort. The larger themes that we identified include people, trust, adaptation, context matters, and expectation management. That's as far as we got.
Thank you for sharing. Let's have another table share. Looks like, Marco, do you want to go? You're being pointed out. You're being called out. It's your turn. Thanks to Lisa.
I didn't want to go, but they made me. So we got a little sidetracked with the flip chart, so we didn't go through all the questions. It looks nice. It looks great. So I'll share it. So one thing we noticed, though, some strengths we thought were very core to all of us, were leadership, being caring, being engageful. Thank you. Demonstrating leadership skills and being very relationship-oriented. And we illustrated this through a sunflower that Janine mentioned. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? He drew it. I didn't. And although a sunflower is very important because it's very positive, it's very light, it goes with the flow, it goes with the sunshine, it has roots. But what gives its roots? What nourishes those roots? Well, it's built on the productivity of the associates, the engagefulness, the caring, authenticity, and also the relations built upon one another. But what enables the roots to grow? What allows the seed to grow? So the little raindrops here we have are the service provided, the purpose, and the education that fosters and grows and settles those roots. And those roots allow and give energy to the sunflower to shift towards the sunlight, which is leadership. And leadership decides when that golden moment is, that S-curve is, to take that turn. And then there's a reciprocity, the unified alignment, and that alignment is the shared vision. And if leadership shows caring and demonstration and everything I showed in the roots, so will the associates. And that's what we spent most of our time on. That's all we got through.
Thank you, Marco.
Yep.
I can't believe you didn't want to share that. We have time for a couple more. Thank you. Yep.
So I wish you all could have heard the great stories from this table of rock stars. There was a real consistency amongst the stories. Although the stories were diverse in their details, they were uniform in some key principles, in that all of them featured innovation, they featured curiosity, they featured an active listening, like a compassionate listening, genuine connections, which I liked the word authenticity that somebody was just saying. I think that's kind of what we were trying to get at, where internal and external stakeholders and processes and information were all listened to in a meaningful and genuine fashion, to incorporate that information into the design of the solution that was being discussed. Integrity was something that came up as being very important, along with compassion for the stakeholders and those impacted by our decisions. Some of the strengths we felt were signals of promise were accountability. We're seeing increasing accountability and transparency around good business practices, meaning sustainable benefit practices. Flourishing practices, innovation and adaptation, values-driven leadership being picked up by more and more small businesses in the case of our conversation, and a commitment to inclusion from the shop floor through the external stakeholders and the community beyond.
Thank you. We have time for one more table to go before I give you a break. So I don't know if maybe the table in the back or in the middle or up here in the front or back there would like to share. Wonderful. Thank you. In the back.
A few of our stories came from across industry, the nonprofit space, community builders, and advocacy. A few of the core elements that we all came across from our stories were identifying win-win situations and making sure there were co-benefits coming from them, and making sure to get the groups aligned on shared goals, make sure we're all rowing together in the same direction. Certain themes that we saw come across were a specific incident that catalyzed the creation of an environment for change. The story that really resonated with us was working, Michelle here, I'm going to call you out by name, working at the Providence House, come across a certain situation where recognizing the community that they were servicing had to travel across town via bus to go see their children, and understanding that drag that's having on the community, ultimately deciding to pick up their operations and move to the west side for better service to their community. As we were diving into the rest of our stories, a few things that we saw that this told about us, and more importantly our organizations, is that shows the importance and the value of relationships, the importance of collaboration, and ultimately the internal energy to want to do good with our stakeholders. All right. And then moving on to question 2, when we're thinking about the core strengths that we would like to see moving on in the future, people first, the ability to be agile, continuous improvement, employee input, making sure that they are one of your stakeholders that you are actively listening to for feedback, and advocating on behalf of your stakeholders. As we look towards 2035, some things that we'd like to see include better meetings. People come prepared, whether that's in a virtual or an in-person format. Reserve time for thinking and strategy. How to be change ready, as we're talking about. We don't necessarily know what's going to be happening in the next 10 years. How can you prepare for it? And for the younger generation, how do you train yourself looking on the past when it might not necessarily be relevant looking forward? So being more adaptable. Basically concludes. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you and welcome back. So over the next hour, what we're going to do is we're going to dream together. So we're going to think about what kind of future we want to create in 2035. And this is one of my favorite appreciative inquiry style questions. I often do these video interviews of entrepreneurs, and this is a question that I ask all of them at the end of our interview. And I say, close your eyes and imagine that you just fell asleep and you've just had the best sleep of your entire life because you wake up and you found out that you just slept for 10 years, or in this case, 9 years. And you look around and you realize that your community, your organization, the world is exactly how you wanted it to be. You've had the impact that you've exactly wanted to have. Describe to me what that world looks like. And so I'm going to ask you all to do the same thing. And so we're on page 23 in your workbook, which, like you've seen, the workbook has more detailed instructions than I'm going to kind of give you right now. But what we're going to do is that we're going to dream without constraints. We're going to think about possibilities, and we're going to speak about what matters most to us. So you're going to have time to work in your table groups. And again, if there maybe are some small groups and they want to combine, maybe some people had to step out and the table's feeling a little light, you're welcome to join another table. And then we're actually going to give some presentations. So first off, as you imagine the future, think about what you notice. So as you think about you're waking up in 9 years, what do you see around you? What are you noticing? What are organizations known and trusted for? What is telling you that this future is working? And as you share these visions kind of with each other at your table, listen for shared themes, powerful images, and what is energizing you the most. But here's where this is going to get really creative and really exciting, because under each of your tables are boxes of arts and crafts supplies. And so you're going to have the next 30 minutes not only to have these conversations, they're kind of near the front of the tables, under the tables. You're going to have the next 30 minutes not only to have these conversations about this future that you envision, but also to put together, a little presentation, a little skit or whatever, a little diagram, whatever you'd like to show us about what that future looks like for you and your table. table. And then in about 30 minutes, we're going to have every table is going to share their like 3 to 5 minute or like 2 to 5 minute presentation about what their future looks like. So like I said, I'm on page 23 of the workbook where you can find more detailed instructions. I'm giving you 30 minutes to discuss and build with your dream kits, your arts and crafts supplies that are in front of you, and to spend some quality time with your tables. And then we really look forward to seeing what your visions of the future are. All right. We're ready to see your visions of the future. So what I'd love to do is to have each table come up here and present. That way everyone can see you, and we'll have your mics, and we'll be taking some really good notes about your presentations and your dreams and the things you want to see in the next 9 years. So do I have a table that would like to volunteer to go first? Thank you. Let's hear it for them going first. It is hard.
And we're small, but mighty.
Small but mighty.
Figure out where we were going with this, and I got charged with the creativity. So bear with me. I am not nearly as capable as the gentleman over here. So we went with the meta-eruption theme because that felt really good, understanding that and explaining that. So right now we look at businesses from the top down. They're big, they're looming, they're just hanging out, they're controlling our everything. When we wake up in 10 years, we want that to be smaller. I think people are getting a little tired of big business being all consuming. I think there's a place for it, but not everything has to be so giant. So as we come down and go back to more of a hometown community feel, in a rainbow, the most concentric energy is the violet. It has the most energy, it's the brightest, it has the most power. It's not necessarily the big guys out there that have that. So when you have that energy, you have more people going out and doing things for good. So what does that mean? In our world, that means everybody has a home and a family and a safe place to be. That means there's compassion at all for everyone. So maybe charity is a thing of the past, because every day you are doing things that make your community better and make it more active and engaged. It is rehabilitation over incarceration. We are both very passionate about the mental health system and about what's happening in our jails and in our state facilities. We're no longer a penal nation in this work.
In our world.
Human connection. One of my goals this year was to be more connected to individuals, everybody sitting in this room, talking face to face. I think it's more important than ever, and in 10 years, it's going to be taught because people don't know how to do it anymore. Reimagining education. What does education look like? Are we still sitting in big buildings? Are we smaller? Are individual businesses the catalyst for education going forward? And of course, small businesses, because we know that small businesses run the world. They keep economies going. So thinking smaller is actually thinking bigger in our mindset.
And we have a family business. We're year 70. We're one of those folks.
We're in the minority.
That are very much a minority, but still trying to be relevant and thrive. So
thank you for making us think about this.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, who's next? All right, love that. Thank you. Come on up.
Like a bouncy house.
Microphone's right here, so everyone can hear you.
Okay, how's that? All right, I'm gonna start. Oh, that would be helpful. Thank you, Lyle. I was like, if you do, hold your ear. Yeah, I think that's perfect. So you can see at the top here, Lyle has a very dense green circle. So we focused specifically on the dream, and maybe because of limitations today, we had to silo it to one. So when we wake up in 2035, what's the dream of good business? So we did just focus it to what can good business look like. And in 2035, you wake up and as a human being, you have excellent access to 3 core pillars: education, wellness, and financial incentive, for the company that you work for the organization. So we tried to take those pillars from things that we've heard today and things that you had said. So when you took away education, there's financial incentive and top-down executive leadership, and how does that play into the people that may not rank as highly? And then wellness. What does work-life balance look like? So those 3 core pillars. And then what we want is these circles to get bigger as you went out. So how does that affect what you do at the company? How does that affect what the company is doing? And you'll see a naughty little black circle here, kind of off to the side. Acknowledgement of what negativity has done to help us in 2035. So hypothetically, if there was somebody who invented the electric car model 10 years ago that is now seen in a not so positive light, that has inspired companies like Rivian, companies, all these other companies to say, I don't really like you very much. I'm going to take what you did. I'm going to do it better with better access to wellness, education, and financial incentive. So these circles get bigger, but they also stay connected and continuously come back to that small, dense circle. And then that helps the company at the highest tier, and that helps the human, wherever they rank in that company, feed into good business. So it's this really beautiful cycle and circle of wellness and success for the dream of what business could look like in 2035. Yeah. Leave it on.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So everyone can hear you.
Great, cool.
Is anybody else on?
Yeah, sure. Anyone from Mississippi? Good. Okay. So, really quick. So remember that happy sunflower we talked about, the nutrients growing, reciprocity between the company, cohesion, and the guidance from leadership? Well, if we don't have any of that, I want to imagine a world where there's no food, there's no nutrients, there's no support, education, purpose. It's dry. You won't have the ingredients, the nutrients of food for growth for engaging, caring, relationships. That's going to dry up the flower. We don't want a dry flower. We want a moist flower. We want a healthy flower. And that's Mississippi. Mississippi is known as like the poorest, if not one of the poorest states in the country, and in the lack of food. And if there is a lack of food, thus energy within that organization, there's no cohesion, no reciprocity, no unification, no reciprocity with leadership, and no leadership means no reinvention. That's how it is right now. Going in 9 years, I'll pass it on to Junaid.
Well, we thought waking up in 2035, what would be something that I want to see, we want to see was eradicating world hunger. And one of the things that Marco mentioned, and like our whole group mentioned, is if you don't have nutrients, how do you do that, right? So from 2025, taking our company as the Fowler Center, which business as a world benefit agent would do, is lead by example. I remember our diffusion chart that had 25%. So here's the Fowler Center. I wish there was helium. It was just our carbon dioxide, so it goes down. But imagine Fowler Center creating this link. So we have like 3 links now. For me, that's the 25%, or like this last 2 would be the 9 to 10%. And the world sees what we're doing in Mississippi, which is our like actionable stuff right beside us. And then we go to South America and create where we can, and the other countries can see that what we have done, and they will be spurred into action. It's like, oh, if they can do it, we can do it as well. And then that's how we plan on eradicating world hunger, one of the SDGs of UN, and not kind of blame like, oh, why is this country not doing it or that country not doing it? So that's our vision waking up in 2035.
You can set it on the table right there. I think I saw a hand for the table.
Hello, Cleveland. We are coming to you live from the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. I am here with several key witnesses to what is happening in this beautiful ecosystem. So I wanted to start at the top with Emily, who is part of our emergent layer. She's going to share a little bit about what's happening in this ideal society.
Hi, everyone. I am the emergent layer. So I am some of our top executives or top visionaries. I am the most prominent person you think of when you think of our company. When you look down from an airplane, I'm the one you see. I get a lot of sunlight and rain, but I'm also exposed to harsh conditions like wind and storms. So I also take a lot of risks by being up here. And then I'm also the one who filters that sunlight down to others and decide where I'm going to spread my pollen to see what other departments are going to flourish.
Amazing. And next, this is our drawing as well of all of this. We're moving to the canopy layer. This is more of the middle management function and what's happening in that, Emma.
Yeah, so here, the middle management does a really good job of going in between the emergent layer and the understory layer. And so I am actively empowering employees who might report to me, providing them with a lot of support and encouragement and communicating effectively and efficiently with both upper management and then all the employees who have their boots on the ground below me.
Amazing. Next, we are going to move to the life of the forest, the understory layer. So we're going down here. There's a little bit of sun, but not as much. And Antoinette's going to share a little bit about that.
So I am in the understory layer. I am where the frontline workers are, the specialized teams, working as a team, being collaborative, feeling heard, belonging, and flourishing. And I add value.
And then last but certainly not least, the forest floor and then the roots in the soil. This is the culture, the psychological safety, and where the ideas are dying but being reborn.
You said it all. So this is the soil. The soil. There's no sun, I guess, that reaches the soil. This is where we find the perfect time to renew ourselves, where all the critters run around. And then these are the roots, which are going through the soil. And this is where the psychological safety and belonging that is the bedrock, along with the mission, vision, and values of an organization. It all starts from there and comes up.
And I mean, as that was kind of a good demonstration that you really don't get sunlight down at the bottom. But amidst all of these layers, there's rain, and they're sticking together. And that is kind of the communication, the trust that should be going within the organization from all of the different layers. The rain trickles down throughout all of them, and the sun also trickles down through most of them. And that's how we feel a successful business should be operating in 2035.
I wanted to keep it. Let's have another group come up while they pick up their art supplies off the floor. There you go.
All right. So here we started imagining the vision for the future, and we started imagining the front cover of today's booklet. And so we just amplified that a little bit. We imagined that good of business and nature and sustainability being one with another. We pictured a few different things. So we really made a debate between crossing out the word good and saying like business should just be business. We don't need to qualify it with good. Or we talked about just crossing out business and just saying we just imagine a world that's full of goodness. But we just decided to make them equal to one another. So good equals business, business equals good, and said that that was the new norm that we're looking for, where those things become synonymous with one another. And in that future, we have some buildings here with green roofs and some trees growing. We talked about a more balanced world between like the circular economy and our lives. And so we have some people down here by the water, like taking their 3-day work week and enjoying and actually being part of the world and life in a way that, you know, what are we building abundance for? If it's not to enjoy those things. We talked a little bit about a donut economy. So there's some donuts up here on the corners. And we talked about just like bringing everyone along for the ride. So as you go up the mountain and the nature here, everyone's kind of helping one another up with a few key kind of values that our group came up with around abundance, sustainability, magnifying good, amplifying good, and then being very values and human based. But even we debated that a little, just being just good. So I really think that kind of sits at the center of what we're looking for.
All right, I think we have a few tables left. Who would like to go next? Okay. The microphone has fallen on the floor.
Okay. So ours is actually really simple. You wanted a headline. Organizations are freed to do what's good. And that means supporting all the stakeholders, community, nature, employers, and all the others. And so we've got the example of opening doors, you know, a doorknob. There's actually a great story. Look it up, called The Warning of the Doorknob. You want to look at that story because it's really interesting. And then we realized this is going to take time. You know, a bee has to pollinate an apple flower, and then it takes a whole season to grow the apple. And so you need the time. And then when we're done, we're going to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 tables left. Who would like to go next? All right, thank you.
No audio there.
Oh, okay,
well,
good.
Actually, audio for that. Never mind.
It's all good. So we really got hung up on the 62% of employees from the Gallup poll that said that they were quiet quitting. And so we have a little bit of a headline, little news clip, and we'll go through that here. And I just want to say Exhibit A here is the quiet quitter. He's tired. He has,
35.
Mm-hmm. Or 20. Because, yeah, moment of silence for the quiet quitter. New generation of Cleveland leaders makes way for loud living. Gone are the days of quiet quitting on the coast of Lake Erie. Cleveland has flipped the quiet quitting on its head by investing in prioritizing training and emotional intelligence, relationship building across businesses, higher ed, government, and nonprofits. Loud living is characterized by employees looking forward to going to work. The work-life balance is actually balanced, and failure is no longer viewed as bad, but as an opportunity for transformative change. So yeah, it's a mindset shift, people. And look at how happy the loud living person is. You just want a whole crew of loud livers, okay?
All right, our last table. All right, so we had diversity as our roots, our foundation. The microphone's right here. Oh.
We had diversity as the roots and our foundation, building equity in the community through employment. And we're going to have, we imagined that our company would be employee owned. So that would be supporting the creation of equity within the community and in the employee population. And that would be buoyed by our purpose as an organization, which allows us to generate global value. And that's our sculpture.
There was also one point of humanity in the workplace, and I think that went in between yellow and pink.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think that I hope that you feel as well that it's so nice to get a chance to see people and hear people's visions of the future. And I'm going to release you all to have lunch now and to get the chance to continue to network and chat with each other. And then this afternoon, we're gonna work on, how can we actually design and craft these visions of the future. So I'm excited for you to join me for what's after lunch. But right now you can grab lunch, which is just out in the hall, take it back in here, mingle with other people. And I look forward to our afternoon together. So before I kick things off again, we're going to do two things. First, I'm going to give Trent here an opportunity to introduce himself because I know some people were asking about his artwork. And so I'd love for him to share just a little bit about it.
All right. Thanks, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trent Wakenight. I am the marker ninja. Part of my identity is as a professional facilitator leading workshops. The other part of my identity is as a graphic recorder. I am here today as your graphic recorder. As you've probably seen throughout the day here, I'm capturing visual notes of what we hear, what we ask, what we discuss. These will become your notes. So after the event, you will receive a digital copy as a part of the summary package from Megan and the team. You're welcome to take photographs of these yourself throughout the day. If there are things that I miss in these notes, an acronym I get wrong, and especially any misspellings, which I guarantee there are some, please let me know. I'm glad to add those notes to it. So great to be with you here today.
Thanks, Trent. Do you want this, Mike? Okay, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Nadya, who's going to get everyone out of their seats and moving.
Okay, so this is just a 2 seconds exercise. We can wake up, we finished eating about 10-15 minutes ago. The blood is already rushing here and we need to bring it in other places. Otherwise we cannot work. A question for you. How long does it take to change? Gut reaction, how long? Yeah? No second, a second. How about your body? How long it would take for you to become much more, let's say at least 15% more agile in your body? Just give me a guess. 6 months. 3 months. A week. 5 weeks. Okay. How about a few minutes? So I will ask you to all get up. And we are scientists here, right? We are the university. So we will do, before we do the experiment, we have to do measurement before the experiment and after the experiment. And this is the way we're going to measure the agility in our body. We will measure how far your torso can move in different directions. So we will all, I will show you in a second, we'll all imagine that my hand is doing this, right? So put your hands together, just fingers combined. And with the hands, first go as far as you can go to the right and remember how far you went. That's your stop, how far you comfortably. Don't damage your spine. So comfortably stop and then back to the left. And for example, I am at least 15% more flexible on the left than I am on the right. So here I'm almost 180 degrees. Here I'm quite further. Yeah? All remembered? Now, I can show you many different ways you can do it, but the funnest one is without use of your body at all. So I'll ask you to close your eyes and do mental exercises in my head. So whatever I'm saying right now, do not move your body. Just imagine you're moving your body. So first of all, close your eyes and imagine that you did exact same thing. You lifted your hands and you turned to the right and suddenly you made a full 365-degree circle with your body. You're like a little snake. And you're laughing. You cannot believe this is happening. What in the world? How can you turn a full circle around yourself? And you unwind back and you put your hands down without opening your eyes, and now you shake yourself a little bit. Now you can shake a little bit physically, not just imagine it. Shake, 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 shake. And then we repeat the same thing. Just in your imagination, imagine you're lifting your hands, turning to your right, and now you could do 2 circles. So it's over 700 degrees. Your knees are turning around themselves, and you cannot believe they're like a little coil of your knees, and you are just imagining, how is this possible? And you're laughing. You're like, I need to tell it to my family, or I need to tell my friend, I wish I could take a picture. This is impossible. And you unwind again, and you shake, 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 shake. And finally, in your mind, again, you imagine you lift your hands, you go to the right, and now you can do 3 circles around your body. You make the first full one, and the second full one, and the third full one. And now you just think, am I on drugs? Am I doing something weird? What is going on? You're laughing, you're joking, you are demanding pictures. This is impossible. And you unwind again and shake, 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 shake. And now open your eyes and put your fingers back together and test to the right and test to the left. How many of you had at least 10% improvement in flexibility? We haven't even used your body. We can start using your body. We can go even further and further in a matter of a few minutes. So most of us assume that agility, change, and structural change, we're talking about your upper torso mobility. So you can think it's a structural change because your bones are involved, your muscles are involved, your fascia are involved. Even with structural change, we can do change quite quickly. The most important thing is to get it right here. And that's what we're doing here. And I will give it back to Megan. Shake, 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 shake. Get ready. Get lymph moving, get blood moving, and let's do the second part of the forum.
Thanks, Nadya. So I'm welcoming you now to the second half of the forum, and we're going to begin or enter into what is called the design phase. And so how might we bring this future of good business to life is what we're talking about. I took all of the dream scenarios that you created, that you so graciously shared with me right before lunch, and I kind of put those together in different themes and have created some different groups for you to be a part of to really start to design what this future might look like. Design is learning. It's not about getting it right. It's about learning forward together. And so that's what we're going to do. So in just a minute here, I'm going to walk around and I'm going to share these 4 different themes, these 4 different groups about how might we create the good business of the future. You're going to get the chance to vote with your feet. So any group that you want to be a part of, that's where you get to go be a part of. I'm going to give you instructions for what you're going to do in those groups. And then just like before, we're going to have some report outs, some presentations where you get the chance to share kind of what you've designed in these groups. And again, we have boxes of crafts all over this room for you to use however you'd like to use in order to get that done. So the first part of design, once you figure out which group, moves you the most, which category you want to be in, for the first part of it is brainstorming. And you can see these instructions on page 27 in your workbook. And so you and your team are going to brainstorm. And so when you brainstorm, some basic rules are that you're going to defer judgment. Don't dismiss any ideas. Encourage wild ideas. They don't have to be realistic. We're brainstorming. We're not criticizing. Be radical. Build on the ideas of others. Only ands. So no, that's not going to work. Just ooh, and this, and that. Stay focused on the topic. Try to hold one conversation at a time. Be visual and go for quantity. And so I'm going to give you time to brainstorm. After that, I'll kind of, wrap that up for just a minute. We're going to theme and vote, kind of start theming the brainstorm that you put together, kind of vote as a group as to what exactly you want to work on. And then you'll move into there's kind of a page in between there. What's on page 29, which is prototyping and is building that design and bringing that to life. And then we'll again take some time to share those prototypes with our group. So here are just the instructions that I went over. We're going to take kind of 60 minutes for the brainstorming and the prototyping. I'll make an announcement, about 20 minutes in that you should start theming and voting, about 10 minutes after that you should start prototyping, and then we'll get a chance to report out and share what you've created with the rest of the participants here at the forum. So I'm going to walk around and I'm going to share with you kind of the 4 different themes that really came out of the dream presentations that you all did right before lunch. Okay, all right, I can hear. So the first one here, we've called Trust as the Operating System. It says, how might we build organizations where trust, psychological safety, and communication from the roots, and leadership communication arises from the roots, and leadership arises from everywhere, following through every layer so that people feel heard, valued, and empowered to contribute their best ideas. So I'll read that again. How might we build organizations where trust, psychological safety, and communication form the roots, and leadership arises from everywhere, following through every layer so that people feel heard, valued, and empowered to contribute their best ideas? All right, the second theme we've called Fully Alive. How might we reimagine work so that people are not just productive, but also energized, where well-being, learning, purpose, and joy are embedded into the business model, and quiet quitting is replaced by meaningful participation and enthusiasm? I'll read that one more time. How might we reimagine work so that people are not just productive, but also energized, where well-being, learning, purpose, and joy are embedded into the business model, and quiet quitting is replaced by meaningful participation and enthusiasm? All right, our third theme we've called Local Power. How might we design businesses that are intentionally rooted in local communities, rich in connection and powerful precisely because they are smaller and more relational? How might we design businesses that are intentionally rooted in local communities, rich in connection and powerful precisely because they are smaller and more relational? And then our last theme we've called Business for Good. How might we design businesses where business equals good? How might we design businesses where doing good and doing well are inseparable, where shared ownership, stakeholder value, circular systems, and equity are built into how value is created and distributed? So how might we design businesses where doing good and doing well are inseparable, where shared ownership, stakeholder value, circular systems, and equity are built into how value is created and distributed? So I encourage you now to get up out of your seat. You can kind of browse if you need to and read the descriptions again. Vote with your feet. Get into one of these 4 groups or one of these 4 opportunity areas, we like to call them. Grab some Post-its off and some Sharpies off of any of the tables in front of you. Everyone should have a pack of Post-its. Everyone should have a Sharpie, and start brainstorming. And I'll be back with you in roughly 20 minutes to suggest that you start theming and voting, and then we'll move on to prototyping. Present their design.
Today at Iterate Inc. We are so delighted that you all have chosen to join our company, where we believe that your agency is the recipe to our success. So today we're going to talk about our incredible flexibility options that are available to you as managers and employees, and we're going to field your questions. So the first thing to know is that we offer a variety of flexibility options that you can discuss with your manager to determine what the right path forward is for you. And we will ensure that at least on a quarterly basis, this choice is reviewed. So if something changes in your life and you would like to pick a different option, you can discuss that with your manager. So it's really important that you have that sense of ownership over the adventure that you choose, that adventure which is your career here at Iterate. Do you have any questions?
With all these options, doesn't that put us at risk? With all these options, doesn't that put us at risk for like equity lawsuits if everybody's not doing the same thing?
One of the services we offer all of our employees is direct coaching for both managers and employees who are given the opportunity to find the right fit for them in terms of role and flexibility structure. So managers will be trained, as well as employees trained, on how to take advantage of these structures while respecting one another and respecting each other's strengths. So we believe that this is a way to create actual parity in the workplace. Rather than creating equality, we're creating equity amongst our employees.
She's good.
I'm a new employee, and I really like to see people's faces, and my team has all decided that they're going to stay off camera. How do I adapt?
So that coaching is going to be a really important tool in your toolkit to help you adapt to those around you, and also to work with your manager about possibly creating camera on Mondays or something that allows you to get some exposure to the faces that you need while respecting the rest of the team's preferences. We see this as a collaborative effort between you, your manager, and your respective coaches.
That was good.
As a manager, and I'm looking at the productivity of my team, I'm wondering, like, if we decide on a certain flexible structure and after a few months it's just not working and productivity has gone down, is there a mechanism in place to help us resolve?
Well, like any business, what we measure gets managed. So you will have KPI and goals for your staff. So on a quarterly basis, we talked about reviewing the choices around the flexible structures that are appropriate for your team. That is a discussion, not a free choice. That's a conversation between you and the employee, and it should be based partly on the goals and KPIs that the employee has set and whether they've been successful in that role. So that's, again, an opportunity for that coach to help you manage that conversation successfully so that your whole team feels involved and you get to change what you need to change in order to meet our business objectives. You're one of my fellow managers.
Yeah, I have a question as a manager. So trying to avoid the productivity being affected, how best can I help my team members to choose a style that works for them and helps them achieve their goals, but also helps us to keep our momentum as a team?
So I'm going to go back to the coaching as being very important, but I will also say that we also want to be listening continuously to our staff. And this process of listening is not just listening to managers, but listening to frontline employees as well, so that over time we collect ideas and we collect innovations, And then each year we have an appreciative inquiry summit that all of our employees are invited to, where we revisit our decisions from the prior year and introduce the ideas generated over the course of the year. So that allows you to be in a continuous adaptation mode and be informing the new structure that we put in place each year so that we can adapt as a team and continue to grow and learn together.
Hi, I'm a new employee, and I see in the handbook that you do job share at this organization. And I really don't like talking to people, so I was wondering if I can job share answering the phone.
There are limits to every structure we have in place. However, we also have transparently published decision trees that employees can reference so that you can understand how we might make a decision like that and come so that you're able to prepare and come to the dialogue with your manager and understand the kind of criteria we'd be using to determine if that is an appropriate allocation of resources.
I have a therapy cow, and I was wondering how Clarence will be accommodated when I come to work.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. I think we need to make sure that Clarence feels welcomed in whatever environment Clarence is living in. And I really think you should think about Clarence probably being most comfortable at home in a remote work environment. Again, it can be a conversation with your manager and your coach. Oh, so the impetus behind this work is that we did our voting, and there were really three categories that almost tied. One was around work structures for employee engagement and productivity and energizing. Another was around professional development and personal development, the coaching conversation, as well as the training on things like how to manage through a flexible work environment, et cetera. And then we had the last thought around mobility too, and the kind of flexibility we wanted to be able to allow people as they mature through their adventure here at Iterate, Inc.
Well done.
Well done. Is there a group that would like to go next? Over here. Delisa will bring the microphones. Delisa, don't forget to turn them on.
Listen to the boss.
My name is Lyle Clark, and most recently, we were at an Appreciative Inquiry Summit at the Fowler Center for Business as an Agent of World Benefit. And one of the opportunity areas that surfaced was one called local power. And what did that mean? It was defined as how might we design businesses that are intentionally rooted in local communities, rich in connections, powerful precisely because they are smaller and more relational. So why do we believe, why did this group vote with their feet here? And why do we believe in local power? First of all, 50% of the GDP of the United States is made up by small to medium-sized businesses. 50% of all coworkers in the United States are made up by small and medium-sized businesses. They're more likely and faster to hire, and they have the opportunity, if they know the right abilities, to make change quicker. So we looked at three key pillars in our opportunity area and how we might design or promote businesses. And I am going to first turn this over to Kyle to tell us how we might promote local businesses.
So before diving into the pillars, we came up with a formula of some sorts to really come up with the end outcome that we believe everybody would want to share, being localized, concentrated growth for our economy. And we believe we will achieve this through curated matchmaking between small and medium businesses, and engaging with the voice of the community, which then created our 3 pillars here. So when we look at promoting small businesses, akin to some of the statistics that were shared earlier, we believe that they are more nimble and able to provide the support needed for these localized communities, and we believe that the interests are shared. Pass along to
Mike, can you talk about community understanding?
Certainly. So when all these 3 pillars have sub-pillars, and small and medium-sized businesses understand their community, and we believe to our core that commerce develops relationships. And those, write that down, because those relationships are going to come back later. You'll hear about it again. We think that the insider information from a small and local business that hires rapidly, that knows the demand of the neighborhood that they live in, can provide support across that neighborhood better than some monolith from a different locality. And then with that, that understanding will also help us develop lifelong givers that give back to their community. And we have some ideas that build on that as well.
Great. And Brandon, can you talk about how we might engage the voice of the community?
So yeah, one of the key things to engaging the voice of the community is curated matchmaking, wherein we connect business leaders with the people in their community, whether that be block leaders or the community elders, depending on the locale and the way that neighborhood's built up. We want to see the voice of the community being used as a guide for our local small and medium-sized businesses, wherein we develop that connection between the neighborhood and the business owner, and just allowing and developing that neighborhood to flourish more.
Great, thank you. 3 pillars. Elizabeth, can you summarize all this brilliance for us real quick?
As a matter of fact, I can. Friends, I hope you're hearing the message that we have generated for you. When we did our brainstorming, very easily 3 or 4 pillars kind of emerged. And one was around business and the importance of business-to-business collaboration. A second area was around what does it look like when businesses create gatherings and create intersections with community and other businesses. And then the third pillar that really emerged for us was the identification of critical values and norms, culture. We called them house values because we started out with an illustration of a house, which is right here. So what's important in our house? The activities of summits and gatherings, curated matchmaking, creating opportunities for mentorships across business to business, but more importantly, amplifying what is working well, because we have that data and we want to amplify that data. I will close this for us by offering some words that were shared here. Commerce and connection develop relationships. And it's been said before, relationships are based on trust, and businesses are based on relationships. Thank you.
Local power.
Very nice.
Flash mob.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Which group would like to go next? Oh, okay. Down over here.
Down here. Thank you. Who's after me? That's right. I want to understand. Okay. Sure. Okay, cool. So we are proposing a consulting firm, a consulting group, consulting thing, where we explore and want to show the connection between relationships and psychological safety and belonging. And what better way to illustrate that? Through a hand grenade. Because if you sever that, everything goes boom. And we don't want boom. Well, we want the organization to boom, but not the other kind of boom. So I'll hand it over to Iris to explain furthermore what we mean by that grenade metaphor.
Okay, so the grenade theory is really like as simple as like the mechanism. On an individual level, people ultimately want to feel passionate about their lives, about their work, about what they're doing, and the best way for them to feel fulfilled is actually relationships. And this has been proven through a number of like psychological studies, etc. And an anecdotal story, I suppose, is that last year, I was a board member for RHA, which is one of the biggest umbrella organizations here on campus. And it was 12 hours of thankless work every single week. And everybody on the board was frankly kind of miserable. But everyone who was very involved and entrenched in this organization stayed in it because of these shared values, because of a sense of belonging and the relationships that they were able to forge. And then secondly, on a collaborative level, the social cohesion that exists between members of a workplace is the very glue that really keeps a team together. And that's what makes teams effective and what makes teamwork possible. And I'll hand it over. Oh, you have your own mic. Okay.
Yes, so we are obviously talking about trust. And as my grandfather said, trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. And anecdotally, we can say that in an organization where there is trust long-term, you will have greater success. Short-term, you could create some competition, you could create some conflict, and that conflict may yield temporary fruit. But over the long term, anecdotally, again, our anecdotal research proves that over the long term, you will find greater gains for everyone when trust is at the foundation and the core of the organization.
It wasn't lost on us the irony of presenting psychological safety in the context of a metaphor that may be so explosive. But as Iris was saying, we've got a lot of cohesion and very tight quality in that psychological safety and that safe space in the middle. And it can also be very fragile and very explosive, as Marco was saying at the beginning. So we developed a metaphor that we need to handle this instrument with care, and that is handling it with candor, appreciation, respect, and empathy. Candor, we do what we say what we'll do, and we exist in that mode every single day. In terms of appreciation, it's not just top-down recognition, it's everybody appreciating everybody else, and that's how we show up for each other. Respect, there's just nothing else without it. It's just so foundational to all of this. And then empathy, really kind of treating each other with care and making sure that we are supporting each other through life's ups and downs, as well as, somebody comes into work and they've had a bad morning, or we can't always leave those things behind at home. So making sure that we are allowing our whole selves to be brought to work and cared for in our environment.
So TLDR, if you sever the relationship between relationships and psychological safety and belonging, your organization will go boom. If you hear it wasn't loud enough, but boom, your organization will go boom, and we don't want that. So make sure you take care of your relationships and psychological safety. That's all we have. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have one group left that's going to present their design idea, their design prototype.
So ours is, again, a real simple idea. Let me just read it, though, what we were trying to do. Business equals good. How might we design businesses where doing good and doing well are inseparable? where shared ownership, stakeholder values, circular systems, and equity are built into how value is created and distributed. And so when we were done with the groups, we had a number of groups. One is the idea of metrics, new ways of measuring success, needing to do that. Looking for markets for good, the idea of growing the whole pie. Healthy communities, you need to be supporting communities. It had things like a livable wage and healthcare for all. Making a case for doing this. That was part of it, was communicating the successes. Operational efficiencies and waste reduction. So, doing it the right way. And then the idea of employee owners having a vested interest in the business. And so really the key is you start in somewhere and you just get it going. And as you have more success, more stories to share, and you can move it forward. And that was the idea that we came up with.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful presentations by all of our groups, all of our opportunity areas. I'm going to give you all a short break. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to get up, stretch your legs. There's snacks out in the hallway for you. And then I'm really excited to welcome our next speaker after this short break before we conclude our work together for the day. So about 10 minutes, and then we'll get started again. Thank you. All right. Thank you for being so prompt and coming back from our break. Now, before we get back in our groups and finish our work together, it's my pleasure to introduce Emily Keller-Dey from the Cleveland Partnership, and I'm really happy to have her here. Let's clap. Emily's work sits at the intersection of business, community, and regional growth, helping organizations collaborate in ways that strengthen Cleveland's economy while creating opportunity for people and neighborhoods. Through her leadership at GCP, she plays an important role in connecting employers, institutions, and civic partners around a shared vision for inclusive and sustainable economic development. What makes Emily's perspective especially valuable today is her focus on putting these ideas into practice. Rather than speaking in abstractions, she works with organizations across the region to translate shared purpose, collaboration, and strengths-based thinking into real initiatives, real partnerships, and measurable impact. Her work reflects the very principles we've been exploring. Building from strengths, designing across sectors, and recognizing that lasting progress happens when business success and community well-being move forward together. So please join me in welcoming Emily Keller-Dey. That'll go to the next slide.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's been great doing this journey with all of you today. Thank you to Megan and to the whole Case Chat, all of you, the whole team, for leading this summit today. It's been truly fantastic. So I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to the work that we do, because I think a lot of people know who the Greater Cleveland Partnership is and what we're doing. But just for those who don't and kind of don't know that the role that we're playing, we are the Regional Chamber of Commerce for the Greater Cleveland region. And fun fact, we're actually the largest chamber of commerce in the nation with just under 13,000 member companies. So that is a really cool thing that I get to do every day, is meet with all of these different companies and organizations. So I kind of see my role as the Director of Sustainability Initiatives as the convener for sustainability for the Greater Cleveland region. So I not only get to work with our member companies, but it's kind of connecting our member companies in the private sector with all of the other organizations and institutions in the region. So a lot of times the private sector gets siloed into what they are doing, and my goal is to make sure that they're collaborating with the public sector, with philanthropy, educational institutions, nonprofits, all of those. And so this is just a small tasting of some of the organizations that I get to work with. But my main goal is to, like I said, connect the private sector with all of these organizations. And so we, about 4 years ago, developed our Sustainability Leaders Group. This consists of just under 50 of the largest companies in the region. And we work with these companies to determine how we can build a more sustainable ecosystem. And you'll notice that some of these companies are competitors. So I always point to Smucker and Nestle as an example. And you think, how can they be in a group together when they're active competitors? Well, now the Chief Sustainability Officer for Nestle, for the North America region, and for Smucker, they get drinks at least monthly. And they are talking, and they didn't know each other before the Sustainability Leaders Group. So it's just about getting these people together so that they can share best practices, because if they're being a truly sustainable company, then they're being transparent anyway. And so they're already putting out that information. Now they can just have a forum to actually share that information with one another. So I have maybe the coolest job in the world because I get to work with all of these companies on different initiatives. Before this, I was working, I was one of two working in sustainability in a 22,000 person global company. So I was kind of doing what these people that I get to work with are now doing. And now we just get to work on all of these really, really cool initiatives. And I wanted to share a few of those specific case studies with all of you today as we move into this destiny or deploy part of the Appreciative Inquiry Summit. I always like to throw this quote on the board. I don't know, is it bad to put NYU quote at case? But I say, when sustainability is embedded in a company's strategy and practice, it can drive better financial performance. And that just shows that, there is a business case for sustainability. There's green and going green is something that I say a lot, because a lot of people think that you can have either or and you can't have both. But truly, when you're being more efficient, when you're reducing waste, when you're innovating for sustainability, that just makes business sense. You don't want to have waste in a business, but you also can't have a business without profit. So you need to be innovating in ways that are going to benefit your company in the end. So the first case study that I want to share is coming from Lubrizol, a local giant company in Cleveland. They have just such an awesome destiny example, because they recently, and by recently I mean in the past few months, patented a technology called immersion cooling technology. Now, I want to preface that I am not an engineer or scientist that is involved in the Lubrizol, but I am going to give you this in the most layman terms possible, because that's how I best understand it. But what you're seeing on the screen right now is this technology. So as we all are very familiar with, data centers are booming right now with AI coming on the scene. And the main energy sink for data centers is typically just cooling down the servers. So it's usually 40 to 50% of the energy usage is just the fans that are pushing air through the servers to cool them down. That also takes a huge percentage of the data center space. So that's a lot of land being used. And then if you factor water into it, we're seeing water in data centers in the news a lot right now. That's a huge amount of waste going into data centers for energy and water. And there's a lot of companies investing in data centers right now. So how can we reduce that energy and water usage? Well, that's what Lubrizol innovated for sustainability to come up with a solution. And that's where they came up with their immersion cooling technology. So this looks super sketchy, but they promised me it's not. Basically, you can see over where the cords are kind of coming out of this liquid. Those are the actual servers being immersed into this chemical that Lubrizol came up with. And so now there is zero need for fans. There's almost zero need for water. That reduces the data center energy usage by 50% in addition to the water. And then imagine if you get rid of all those fans, how much you can shrink down those operations to a very small square footage. So this is, AI is not going away. Data centers aren't going away. I doubt that we're all going to give up our phones and computers tomorrow. So how can we innovate to be more sustainable? And then, Lubrizol's making a lot of money off of this product. They patented this awesome product, but it's also saving their customers tons of money, tons of CO2 emissions, lots of water usage and space. So, the real estate market is crazy right now. So this is a company that I like to share this example because a lot of people don't think of these kind of minute innovations that are truly changing the world as we see it. Another example that is local to here is currently reaching its destiny. I guess I can't say that it has reached that destiny yet, but I was hearing from a lot of our member companies in our sustainability leaders group that they wanted to do solar here in the greater Cleveland region. They wanted to do renewable energy here, and most of them were sending millions of dollars out of state to purchase renewable energy credits from around the country or the world. And they were tired of doing that, frankly, and a lot of them were starting to face claims on, well, where are you getting those renewable energy credits for? Are they real? Are you actually doing this? And so they wanted to say, we have a solar field right here that we can point to that we are getting our energy from, and this is why we are carbon neutral, or this is how we're reducing our emissions or our energy burden. But the problem is, in Northeast Ohio, it is not the best environment to purchase solar panels. And I mean that in several ways. I'm sure you're all thinking of the clouds, but it's also that politically and just kind of the way that the state of Ohio is set up for renewable energy, it doesn't make financial sense really to purchase solar panels here versus other places. There is a return on investment here just like everywhere else, but for example, I was talking to one company and they were like, we're headquartered here and we want to show them that we have solar panels on our roof here at our headquarters. But we can't do it because it makes way more financial sense for us to put solar panels on our headquarters in France or our building in California. The return on investment is so much quicker. So they were like, Emily, you need to determine how to do that here. And I'm like, what? How am I supposed to do this? This is way more than a me problem. But I came up with a semi-solution mimicked off of Cuyahoga County's residential solar co-op program. So Cuyahoga County brings together a bunch of residents who want to put solar on their rooftops, and they purchase all of those solar panels in bulk, so then it's cheaper for everyone. And I was like, why can't we do that at a commercial scale? And so that is where I handed off the idea to Cuyahoga County, so I cannot take credit for the deployment of this project. But and this is an example of one of the solar fields that they actually have deployed on a landfill in Brooklyn area. So using brownfields, remediating brownfields in ways that no one else can because you can't build on something like that. They have already purchased the panels for the commercial solar co-op, and they're going to be going to their respective owners soon. But it's great because it gave these companies an opportunity to get a reduction in price. They also purchased it before the tax credits went away, the federal tax credits. So generally, it was all around a good initiative, and I like to use that as an example of convening can really bring people together, and when you come together, you can do more. And then the last example that I've been totally nerding out about lately is the Cleveland thermal system and generally district energy and geothermal systems. So some people might know that underneath Cleveland for over 100 years, there has been a district energy system silently working and feeding into hundreds of buildings around greater Cleveland, or just actually the city of Cleveland itself. And this is a district energy system at work. So what's really exciting about district energy is you can use it in a million different scenarios. And Corex Cleveland Thermal is the company that I work with a lot because they're our local geothermal and district energy provider. But an example of someone that is hopefully you guys will see this destiny in the news very soon, but I can't use the name of the company just yet, but I'm sure you guys will all see it soon. There's a company that has a very heat-intensive manufacturing process, and right now they're spending a ton of money getting rid of that heat. You can't have that heat inside, they have to cool it down. So they're spending so much energy and so much money to cool down this process. What we determined is that why are we getting rid of that heat? That is a very valuable energy resource. So how can we reuse that heat to make a better process? And if we look at the footprint of this manufacturer, surrounding the manufacturer is a lot of office buildings, and then surrounding that is apartment buildings. And all of them are older. That is important because they use chilled and heated water to heat and cool the buildings. And so if we just use that waste heat to heat the water at the manufacturing plant, then now they're going to be able to use a district energy or distributed energy system to heat all of the apartments and all of the office buildings surrounding it. So it's a win-win overall because they're saving a ton of money. The apartment buildings, like these people who live here, are not going to have to spend money on heat anymore, like the natural gas that they're currently using. And then also the office buildings of that company are going to not have to pay for heat anymore. So this is another case of there's a problem that was happening. A lot of people were spending unnecessary money to do unnecessary things. Obviously heating your home is a necessary thing, but didn't need to use natural gas to do that at the moment. And they used the just general district energy solution to kind of reach that destiny of what can you do. And then generally geothermal, don't even get me started, but geothermal is such an awesome opportunity that we're looking more into in the greater Cleveland area because apparently we have the perfect ground underneath us. Well, I guess not as perfect as the Nordics with like their volcanoes and stuff. That's truly perfect, but we're the next best case scenario with the type of rocks and soil that we have beneath the ground. So we're looking into a lot of geothermal opportunities as well. I will leave it at that because I could probably talk about our companies for a while, but those are a few that have reached their destiny. Thank you.
Let's just give Emily one more round of applause. So I'm really thankful that she agreed to come and speak. I really wanted her to get a chance to share because I think oftentimes in this space, when we're talking about good business and when we're talking about sustainability or thriving or flourishing, we feel like it's a dream, like it's not something that we're actually going to achieve. And as part of kind of the next step in the process that I'm taking you through today in the last last hour or so of your work here, I want you to think about those steps that you can take in order to make the ideas that you shared with us, the designs that you shared with us, a reality. And so I'm really thankful that Emily agreed to come and just share some examples of instances where some of these dreams have really become a reality and have been, deployed and delivered, because that's what I'm going to ask you to think about next. So where destiny is where we're at right now. We're thinking about the delivery and the deployment of the ideas that you've created. And so how we're going to work again, you're going to get back into your design groups. And then we're going to, at the end, share what's called your aspiration statements. So from idea to action. So consider what is your kind of first meaningful step. And you can find these instructions in your workbook on page 30. Who's going to take ownership of kind of the steps that need to happen in order to make your idea a reality, and what extra support is needed? Think about kind of the immediate, like next few weeks, what you can do, the near term, next few months, longer term, the coming years. Again, you can group similar ideas together, prioritize what feels most impactful. And then what you're going to do, and this is on page 32 and 33 in your workbook, is you're going to create an aspiration statement. So an aspiration statement is something that's bold, that's energizing, that really describes the future as if it already exists. So what is it that you're aspiring to be as if it were happening right now? And it serves as your North Star for action. So we're going to take about 30 minutes for you to think through that action plan that's on page 31, and then create your aspiration statement that's on page 32 and 33. And then we're going to take a little bit of time right at the end, and we're going to share your aspiration statements. And what I would love for you to do then is you can either use my email address or this very fancy QR code that one of my students set up for me that'll take you right to the ability to send me an email, and to email me your aspiration statement, because I'm going to get them up here on the slides as part of the presentation, and we'll share out your aspiration statements before we conclude for the day. So I'm going to invite you to get back into your groups, work on your action plan and your aspiration statements over the next 30 minutes or so, and then have those sent to me, and we'll get them up here on the slides for you to share with our whole group today before we conclude. Yeah. Yes, your design groups. Yeah, you could sit by your whiteboards or find a table somewhere to work together, however you want to work together. All right, thank you. Okay, sorry for the short delay. I wasn't getting some of those emails, but thank you to my MBA students for stepping in and helping me get all of your aspiration statements up on the board. Yes, thank you. All right, so I'd love to have each group come up, and I'll have your aspiration statement up here. You can read it and then tell us just a little bit about it, and then we'll wrap up. So first I have our Business Equals Good team, which are hanging out in the back there. So if you can make your way up to the stage here, share your aspiration statement with us, and tell us a little bit about what you're aspiring to. Come on up. You can come on the stage and use the podium microphone. Oh, we got.
Okay, we said our business is the equivalent of good. It is where doing good for our employees, communities, and planet exists simultaneously while doing well as a business. Our stakeholders hold value, our waste is limited and redesigned, and equity and inclusion is a building block of our enterprise. So essentially, we just want to cover planet, people, but also acknowledge our business is important and we need a profit with that. So as we're working on what our business is, the world is thriving, our communities are thriving, people are thriving. We want to use that circular design approach and just say, first, we're going to start by limiting our waste, but also how can we redesign our waste when we do create it, because we will. And also just acknowledge that equity and inclusion is a building block of the enterprise, because people are the building blocks of our enterprise. So just want to acknowledge every system and all the people and resources who make up a business, and just make sure that we are all doing good work as we do our business. Anything else? Great. Thank you.
Let's see which group I have next. Our Fully Alive group. I'm going to try to move this out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to push it back.
Okay. So with the epidemic of quiet and loud quitting and the increasing complexity of flexible work, we are creating a program that would help both managers and employees to achieve work-life balance for themselves, for them to live a full life where they succeed professionally and personally by equipping their managers and employees with the skills to thrive in this new normal through our custom coaching plan and training. So this is going to be a combination of a implementation program to help companies deploy this type of coaching program to help everybody learn how to do flexible work better, and ongoing coaching availability for everybody.
Want to share our groovy name?
Oh, our program name is called Flex to Flourish.
That's quite.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful job. All right. I think our trust is the operating system group. This is you.
All right, we're still working on our names, so we're Trust Pin or Handle with Care. We're still balancing things out here, but we facilitate the co-creation of human-centered workplace contract that enables flourishing for every individual through the CARE model: candor, appreciation, respect, and empathy. We use an appreciative inquiry approach to assess change readiness and help leaders develop implementation plans. We measure key performance indicators and provide leadership training. There's a huge leadership focus here because leaders are the ones who enable the climate for everyone to flourish in the organization. So we want to make sure that we are starting with that foundation and having things expand from that point. I want to add anything? Good? Sounds good.
All right. Local power.
Exceeded my maximum capacity already.
We're almost done. You did the best.
Hello, friends. Hate it when the microphone's taller than me. I think it's a great idea. Engaging the voice of the community, small and medium business collaboration will generate and create localized, concentrated growth for our community. I mean, our I wasn't kidding. Economy.
It's perfect.
Thank you. We said it all earlier. I'm not going to. We spent all of our time picking Emily's brain because we had a question about what's going on here in Cleveland with small and medium-sized businesses. So it turned out to be a very fruitful conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Really nice. Thank you. So I just want to take a couple minutes and say thank you to everyone. I really appreciate all of the amazing work that you've done today, and I hope that you all feel inspired by each other and all of the ideas and the conversations that you were able to have today in the room. And so as we're kind of bringing today to a close, I'd really like to invite you to just take a second and pause once more, just briefly, and reflect on your day. Think about a moment that stood out to you, a story you heard, a conversation that shifted your perspective, or an idea that stayed with you longer than you expected. Those moments matter. Because what we've done here today is more than just attend a forum. We've practiced a different way of seeing, a different way of learning. Throughout the day, we've returned again and again to the core idea of appreciative inquiry, that the questions we ask shape the futures that we create. Today, you asked different questions. You listened for strengths, you shared stories instead of just opinions, and you explored what becomes possible when we intentionally design for connection, purpose, and shared value. At the Fowler Center and the Weatherhead School of Management, we believe this work is not confined to classrooms or conferences. It lives in organizations, neighborhoods, communities, and it continues long after today ends. Again, there is no more fitting place for this work than in Cleveland. This is a region that really understands reinvention, not as a one-time event, but as an ongoing practice. And I think we heard a lot of that from Emily. It's a place where people and institutions continue to build forward by recognizing what has always been strong here: deep expertise, resilient communities, and a commitment to one another. And what we saw today really reflects that same spirit. You demonstrated that strengths-based leadership is not abstract, it's practical, it's human, and it's urgently needed. So as you leave today, I invite you to ask, not what should I fix next, but instead carry a different question with you. What gives life to the systems I'm a part of, and how can I help grow more of it? That question can change conversations. It can change how teams work together, and over time, it can change organizations and communities. So before we close, I just want to offer a sincere thanks. Thank you to our speakers, Nadya and Emily, for sharing your expertise and your stories with us today. I want to thank our partners and our collaborators for investing in this work. And I want to thank each of you for showing up with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to engage fully. So thank you to all of you. I also want to give a special thanks to all of my MBA students. I have 7 MBA Fowler Center fellows, Chad, Tori, Delisa, Molly, Zaya, Haley, and Asif. And I could not have done this event without them. You've seen them running around here today, handing you mics. They set all of the supplies up, so they've been a huge help. And I know that she's not in this room, but Natalie Miller at the Weatherhead School of Management, I could not have done this without her, our event planner. Many of you met her when you checked in this morning, and she was phenomenal and just amazing and instrumental in the organization of this event. So even though she's not in this room, I just really want to give her and my MBA students a round of applause. I hope that what you practiced today does not end here. I hope that you take these conversations back to your organizations, classrooms, neighborhoods, and leadership roles and continue asking questions that build trust, possibility, and shared purpose. So on behalf of Case Western Reserve University, the Weatherhead School of Management, and the Fowler Center for Business as an Agent of World Benefit, thank you for being part of our global forum today. I invite you to join us for drinks and hors d'oeuvres out in the hallway to continue conversations or spend a little bit of time kind of relaxing, reflecting on the day, and enjoying each other's company. Thank you so much.